anomalies with the sphere. I didn't expect that. Today's special guest is Eric Dubay. He says, quote, "The greatest lie and most successful cover-up in history, NASA and Freemasonry's biggest secret, is that we live on a plane, not a planet. That Earth is the flat, stationary center of the universe," unquote. Eric is an American living in Thailand, where he teaches yoga and Wing Chun part-time while exposing the New World Order full-time. He is the author of 4 books and is the president of the International Flat Earth Research Society. His website, atlanteanconspiracy.com, which is also linked at ours. And directly from Bangkok, Thailand, I would like to welcome Eric Dubay. Hello, Eric, and welcome to Veritas. How are you?
Great. Hey, Mel. Thanks for having me on. That was a great interview.
It's my pleasure. For months, you and I have been in touch. Finally, we get a chance to speak with you because something is happening. A lot of people are looking into the flat Earth conspiracy. First of all, how did you, because to me, I didn't want to hear it first. I want to know, how did it begin for you? How did you all of a sudden awaken to this reality?
Nobody wants to hear it at first, do they? It sounds like the most ridiculous thing, and we've kind of been programmed to think that. The idea of a flat earther has been ridiculed for so long that it's programmed into us that that's a ridiculous notion that we should pass right by. But I personally first started looking into it in my 20s, having never fully bought the globe model. When it was presented to us in school, I remember thinking, wouldn't we fall off the bottom of that spinning ball? Wouldn't the water go over the edges? And of course, the teacher presents you with gravity, the ball-earth explanation for everything they can't get around. And gravity is this force that pulls everything towards the center of large masses, they say. So as a result, we're stuck to the ball, the buildings are stuck to the ball, the oceans are stuck to the ball, and that's the explanation you get in school. So I went along to get along, but always had a nagging doubt in the back of my mind. And I started coming across information on geocentrism, which is that the Earth is the center of the universe and everything revolves around the Earth. We've been taught the heliocentric model in school, where the sun is the center and everything revolves around the sun. That was actually updated to what I call the acentric model, actually, because they say now that even the sun isn't the center, because the sun is only the center of a solar system, and the solar system itself is revolving around the galaxy, and the galaxy is revolving around the universe. So there's many supposed motions that they claim the Earth and the solar system and the galaxy are going under. So once I started researching geocentrism, I started finding proofs for the fact that Earth is stationary, and so couldn't possibly be the heliocentric model. And then as you get more and more into that, you find that not only is the Earth stationary, but the supposed curvature that they claim exists, 25,000 miles in circumference, they claim the ball Earth is. So there should be a noted curvature of 8 inches per mile squared, going by the Pythagorean theorem and spherical trigonometry. That's the curvature that should be present on a globe 25,000 miles in circumference, as we've been told. But you just can't measure it anywhere. So there's been experiments taken for hundreds of years trying to find this curvature, and it's just nowhere to be found. The Earth's flat as far as the eye can see. So I started reading some of these old flat Earth books from the 19th century by authors like Samuel Rowbotham, William Carpenter, Lady Blunt, Gerard Hickson, Thomas Winship, and some others. These are old flat earthers back in the 1800s. And I was quite surprised to see that they had plenty of proofs and evidence for their model, the flat Earth model. And over time, come to become a flat earther myself. So now, yeah, as you said, I'm the president of the International Flat Earth Research Society, and I've written a couple books on it. So that's my awakening. It's taken quite a while. It's been over a lifetime, but like I said, I never fully bought the model, so I wasn't like one of these kind of NASA science guys that's really into what they say or whatever. Right from the get-go, I already had my questions, so that nagging doubt in my mind was always there.
I'm still searching. I'm still looking. And like I said at the beginning, the more I try to disprove it, the more I come back to it and cannot explain this fear. So this is really bothersome. So since May, which is when you and I made contact for the first time, I've been writing a lot of notes. So it's going to seem as if I'm jumping around, but I have 2 months worth of notes because I've exposed myself to a lot of information. And I hope that at the end of the interview, a lot of people can at least wake up to the reality that what we've been taught in school. What is the first thing you see when you go to preschool or even kindergarten or first grade? The first thing you see, it's that big blue ball that they have there. In fact, I've been collecting them for years. And now when I see them in my office and in my studio, I question that. But Eric, what are they hiding from us and why? Why can't independent explorers travel to the North and South Poles and military vessels patrol the areas and uphold restrictions by force? Why is that?
Well, there's Arctic and Antarctic treaties, and so independent explorers aren't allowed to go to the North Pole or the Antarctic. I would say the reason is because of the flat Earth, and they don't want this to get out. So in the flat Earth model, the North Pole is the only pole. That's in the middle. Antarctica, instead of being a tiny continent on the bottom of the ball, is actually up surrounding us 360 degrees. And so, regardless of whether you're on a ball or a flat plane, it's the case that if you travel south in a straight line from any direction, you'll end up in Antarctica at an ice wall. So in the flat model, that's all around you. Now, people have tried to go there independently, and they've been stopped by military vessels, put in jail, fined. Jarl Anderhoy is an example of this. So they just don't want you to go there. The only way you can go there is on their special pre-approved scientific missions. So why don't they want us to go there is because if you're able to go to the North Pole or Antarctica, then you're able to take a compass and find out if you're actually there. Part of the deception is that they've told us there's a geomagnetic pole, there's a dipole, and there's the geographic pole. The geographic pole they put at 90 degrees on GPS, and so people in documentaries going to the North or South Pole, they'll be on a plateau of ice walking, the mustache full of ice, will whip out a GPS and it'll show 90 degrees, and they say, "We're here, hooray, we're at the North Pole, we're at the South Pole." Nobody ever pulls out a compass, because of course we know the North Pole is magnetic, and all compasses go towards it. But you won't see any clip of someone at the North or South Pole pulling out a compass to prove that they're at the North or South Pole. You should be able to walk in a circle, and north would be in all directions, and that way you can show that, yes, you truly have found the magnetic North Pole. But their excuse is that the poles are constantly moving, so they're not actually at 90 degrees. So none of these documentaries ever actually show where the North Pole is. And their excuse for this is that in the center of the ball Earth, there's molten metal constantly shifting around, so that causes the dipole of the ball Earth to constantly move as well. This is just an excuse so that we can't actually prove that their model is incorrect. There is no magnet in nature that has a molten core and that causes the dipole to move around conveniently the way they talk about. But a magnet that does exist in nature is a ring magnet, like in loudspeakers. And this is the magnetism of the flat Earth we're on, where there's one pole at the center, and the opposite pole is the circumferential barrier all the way around. So the South Pole is everything around the circumference. That's how a ring magnet works, and that's how the ring-shaped Earth with Antarctica as the circumferential barrier works, and the North Pole in the middle. And so they don't want us to know that, and that's why we've got the Arctic and Antarctic treaties, and it's military enforced so that nobody can go out there and prove this conspiracy. However, there are many other ways to prove it. I've just written a book called 200 Proofs Earth is Not a Spinning Ball. So besides just traveling to the Arctic or Antarctic, there's plenty of proofs that we can do right in our backyard to prove that we're not on a spinning ball.
At the end of the interview, I'm going to discuss something that I tried for myself. I just came from Mexico, and for years, I was looking at the horizon in the afternoon when the sun was, quote unquote, setting or moving away, and I saw mountains that you can't see during the day. And you would ask the locals, what is that? And they would say, well, that's San Felipe, Baja California. And then I found out that that's 80 miles away. How in the world is it possible for me to see that? I have pictures that I've included on the website so people can see it, but we can discuss that later. But if anybody wants to stay with the old paradigm of the sphere, at least they should question why we're not allowed again to enter that area of the world, the North or South Pole. Why is there a multinational agreement still in place since the 1950s? And why are the military forces of the world preventing anyone from entering? The agreement was signed first by 10 countries, including the USA, and now there are 50 on board. What is that agreement really telling us, Eric?
Yeah, I'd say that agreement is telling us that they don't want us to go there because there's something they don't want us to find out. And like you said, the blue ball model that everybody sees, the reason everybody thinks that they're on a spinning ball in the first place is because we've been shown videos and photos of a blue marble, they call it, spinning around in space. Our actual everyday perspective is of a flat, motionless plane. You never see any curvature, you never feel any motion, but we've been shown on every news program, every movie company, every channel on television basically has a logo of a spinning ball, so it's in our face all the time, and it's in every movie, so we just assume that that's what it is. But if we'd never been shown such movies, if we'd never seen a television, if we just used our eyes and our experience and our senses and done experiments for ourselves, we wouldn't ever find that we were on a spinning ball. So they want the propaganda to stay in deep. They don't want us to go independently exploring on our own, because then we'd be able to find things out. Like you said, seeing the mountain 80 miles off. That should be, the mountains should be behind almost a mile of curvature at that distance. And they should also, if you can see them at all, the peaks should be leaning backwards away from you. This doesn't happen. Clouds, hot air balloons, things going away from you, they should lean away if we're on a ball. And they should also curve over with the ball. Clouds, you should see the bottom of the clouds more and more as they get closer to the horizon if they were curving over a ball. But they don't, because everything just disappears based on perspective. So like when you're looking down a long hallway, you can imagine the roof slowly goes down towards the center point. The floor slowly comes up towards the center point. The right and left walls slowly come towards the center point as well. So our vision, the perspective of our vision, the way it works, is like a pyramid shape, where the base of the pyramid is at your head, and the apex of the pyramid is at the focal point in front of you at the horizon. So this is what we're seeing when we see a horizon, when we see the clouds tending towards the horizon, or we see the ground tending up towards the horizon. This is just the way that our eyes work. And when you zoom in on the horizon, you can see things from beyond it. The ball model, they tell you that the horizon is where the curvature of the Earth begins. But if this is the case, then when you zoom in on the horizon, you should be seeing off into outer space, because the Earth starts to curve down more and more as you go. In reality, the better zoom lens you get, the more of our flat Earth you can zoom in. I just got a Nikon Coolpix P900. It's one of the best zoom cameras they've got. This thing is a flat Earth proof in itself. You just zoom in on the horizon no matter where you are, and you can take in more and more and more of the horizon. For instance, one old ball Earth proof they had was that the ships disappearing over the horizon, the hulls disappear before the mast, because that's the ship going over the curve of the Earth, they say. But now with technology, telescopes, and zoom cameras, we can have a ship completely disappear over the horizon, not just the hull, and use the zoom function to bring the entire thing, hull and all, right back into view, proving that it hasn't descended over a mass of curved water, as they tell us, but in fact, it's just gone beyond our perspective. And with the aid of technology, we can bring things right back into focus. And people will say, well, if that's the case, then I should be able to see clear across the ocean. I should be able to see all the way across the flat Earth, if that's the case. But we can, like I said, we can see much farther than you could see on a ball 25,000 miles in circumference. But that does not thereby mean that we can see an unlimited distance, especially at the lowest, densest level of the atmosphere. Atmosphere, another word. I call it the atmosphere flat. But you can't see far because of the air is not
Particles.
transparent. Yeah, exactly. Especially at the lowest, densest layer. You can imagine the hazy, on a humid day, the haze over a road. That's the same kind of thing that's going to happen on all telescopes. They blur out like that before you could zoom in on Antarctica or something. So that's not a disproof of the flat Earth that you can't see, thousands and thousands of miles. But you can, however, see hundreds of miles sometimes, like you said. And if you can, there's reports of being able to see almost 200 miles. At that distance, there should be like 4 miles of curvature. So people have seen things that you absolutely should not be able to see on a ball 25,000 miles in circumference.
Absolutely. And I was with two scientists while I was seeing that. With a telescope, I just used my smartphone. I just zoomed a little bit, and I told them, what do you think that is? And one scientist is an engineer. He said, oh, those are clouds. So we waited half an hour, and the clouds did not move. All the other clouds moved. The other one is a physician, and he looked at me and he said, you are freaking me out. It's impossible. We should not be able to see beyond, 5-6 miles beyond? And then I showed him pictures of the mountains as if you were actually entering in a boat, going to the coastline. And those were the exact mountains that we saw 80 miles away. People in southern Spain are reporting they can see Morocco. Even recently here from the Great Lakes, they were able to see the Chicago skyline over 120 miles away. And of course, the meteorologist said, oh, that's just a mirror image or something along those lines. Did you see that?
Yeah, I think it was 60 miles away, and he called it a mirage.
A mirage, exactly.
Now, a mirage is a genuine phenomenon that happens, but the picture is inverted when a mirage happens.
Exactly.
And the Chicago skyline was perfectly normal. And a mirage, you'd usually find it, well above the actual image, whereas this image is exactly where it should be, right on the horizon. If it was a mirage, it should be somewhere hazy up in the sky or something, but this image is right on the horizon, just as it should be.
You should be able to see the Sears Tower's antennas at the bottom, not at the top as they are. Now, they are supposed to be, now I'm going to be jumping around, there are supposed to be about, 40,000 satellites above our heads. Is there a space air traffic or space traffic control system for satellites, Eric?
So satellites, space stations, astronauts, space travel, this is all part of the ball Earth deception, as well as the moon landing and the Mars landings. They've got us thinking that they can suspend people and metal and spaceships and rockets and everything out in the non-gravitized vacuum space, they call it out there. So they say that there's atmosphere up to a certain indeterminable point that they've never told us, and this atmosphere at beyond that point becomes non-gravitized, non-atmosphere, and you just pop out and you can float, right? So anytime you've gone up in an airplane, a hot air balloon, a rocket, whatever, anything any of us amateurs can send up, no matter what, it goes up and inevitably comes right back down. They say that they can send stuff up high enough that it just keeps going up and doesn't come back down. And that's what they claim satellites are doing and the space station is doing. But again, we can't confirm this. Anything we've ever done comes right back down. So we have to take their word that this is possible at all. And when we look at their rockets, this is how they claim they get into outer space, is these rockets. Their rockets never go straight up. Every single rocket launch from a government space agency, you'll notice, follows a parabolic curve. It goes up, it reaches a peak right around 100,000 feet, same place any amateur rocket would reach a peak. You just can't get much higher than that. But what they do is as the rocket starts coming back down, they make sure that it goes down over the ocean, out of the way of any curious observers. And as anyone can see it coming back down to Earth, asks, hey, how come the rocket's not going up anymore? They
Like a
say,
bell
oh,
curve.
yeah, yeah. Well, it's going around the curvature of the Earth, is what they tell us. So every single rocket, the reason that it follows a parabolic curve, they say, is because it's going around the curvature of the Earth. The real reason is they can't get up any higher than that. And even if they could, you think about it, a rocket needs something to push against. So if you're in non-atmosphere, a rocket, any sort of propulsion, would send you spinning violently like a gyroscope at 360 degrees. There's nothing to push against to send you to the moon or to send you to wherever they claim to be going. You'd just be at the whim of gravity or at the whim of space wind or whatever forces are pushing you. You wouldn't be able to do the things that they say they're doing out there in space. What they're really doing is using camera tricks like the movie Gravity. They use green screens and wires. They use zero-G planes doing parabolic maneuvers to fake that they're floating out in outer space. And they use dark pools with LCD screens projecting a fake ball Earth to do outside shots when they're on their spacewalks, as they call it. So just using these simple camera tricks, we've been convinced that they're able to send up rockets into this fake outer space area where you just float around. So satellites are out there in this floaty place they claim exists hundreds of miles up. We can only get about 20, 30 miles up, and any further than that, we just come falling back to the Earth. They claim that they have their special technology that only they can afford, the trillions of dollars of tax money they fleece from us. So because of that, they're able to get up higher than us to this floaty spot where all these satellites are. Now, in the floaty spot in the thermosphere, it's supposedly 2,000 degrees Celsius. And these satellites are made of gold, aluminum, and other metals, which all have melting points much lower than this. They get around this saying there's no air there in that or whatever in the atmosphere, so the temperature doesn't translate onto the metals or something. But they've got an excuse for everything. As I've said in other interviews, they literally have a lame excuse for everything you can think of, and I know them all, and I can present them to you. But there's also a common sense flat Earth explanation for everything as well. People have been exposed to their ball Earth excuses for a long time, so they're quick to but they haven't heard of the common sense flat Earth explanations, so they're quick to ridicule those because all they've ever heard is this.
Well, this reminds me of 9/11. A good friend, Dr. Judy Wood, she wrote the book "Where Did the Towers Go?" She's she has a PhD on engineering, mechanical engineering, and she has written the only book. It's almost you have to see it in a university to see it. It's 300, 400 pages long, and everybody ridicules her without even reading the book. The same thing I say with anybody who wants to discuss the flat Earth. Listen to what we are discussing tonight before you discount everything, because that's your programming doing its thing. It happened to me a few months ago. But recently I spoke with Bart Sibrel. He's the producer of the documentary "A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon." He's going to be with us in a few weeks, and he interviewed one of the Apollo astronauts and basically mentioned the Van Allen belt. And now we found out that there's not only one, but I think it's 5 layers. So he told the astronaut, "How were you able to go through the Van Allen belt?" And the answer was, "Well, we haven't discovered it back then." That was the answer that he got.
Well, yeah, if you haven't discovered it, it can't affect you. It's just like the Wile E. Coyote when he falls off the cliff. He doesn't actually fall down until he realizes that he's gone over the cliff. This is how NASA works. NASA stands for never a straight answer, don't you know?
Exactly. Now, we're told satellites are real. Why are we dropping thousands of miles of fiber optic cables around the planet if satellites are real, Eric?
All right, and why are we building all these cell phone towers all over the place if we've got satellites giving us cell capabilities? Everything is done ground-based. Like you said, they've got fiber optic cables going across the oceans. They've got cell towers set up everywhere. So even GPS is just triangulated cell phone towers. Satellites are not necessary for anything that we do. You look at TV dishes, almost none of them are facing more than 45 degrees upwards because they're receiving signal from a ground-based tower. If we were actually receiving signals from these geostationary satellites hundreds of miles up, then most TV dishes should be pointing straight up all over the world.
That's true. Never thought about that. Now, why are ships in the middle of the ocean, far from land, using then if satellites are not real?
Right. Well, long before there was GPS, military had systems like LORAN and DECA, and these are ground-based navigation systems that they were using for decades, and they work just fine. So, I mean, this kind of propagation has been working long before the supposed advent of satellites, by the way, which were invented by a science fiction Freemason science fiction writer, Arthur C. Clarke. He wrote about the geostationary satellite in the science fiction novel, and then became science fact shortly thereafter. But another thing about these, they call them geostationary because they say that the Earth is spinning like 1,000 miles an hour, and up there where the satellites are, the atmosphere is stuck to the spin through gravity. So the satellites themselves are spinning at like 10,000 or 15,000 miles per hour, but they're stuck in orbit in the exact same spot relative to the Earth over which they are. Now, this is interesting because people claim that they can see satellites moving across the sky, or guys with telescopes. Really, all you can see is a light moving across the sky, but they'll say, it's a satellite. But then it's supposed to be geostationary. If satellites truly are geostationary, then they should be just a pinpoint of light that does not move ever. And you can see it day after day, night after night, year after year in the exact same spot. But that's not what people are seeing when they say, oh, there's a satellite. I mean, they may see planes, drones, or other unidentified flying objects moving across the night sky, but you're definitely not seeing a geostationary satellite moving. And like I said, there's nothing up there floating around in outer space anyway. So, if something's moving across the sky, it's flying. It's not floating.
When we think of maps, Eric, we think of the USGS, the United States Geological Survey. Why do they use the flat Earth map?
Right, yeah. The USGS actually uses the azimuthal equidistant map, which is a flat Earth map projection. And the UN, the United Nations, their logo is a flat Earth, strangely divided into 33 Masonic sections. So why is the UN, the USGS, why are these official organizations using a flat Earth map as their official map? Why does NASA admit to using geocentric calculations for their rocket launches? Why is the official 1892 map, Gleason's, a flat Earth map? You can check it out. People have found it in the Boston Library and other libraries. There's plenty of flat Earth maps. Mercator, the guy that gave us our projection map that we use in schools today, his 1569 map is a flat Earth map, showing the North Pole being a magnetic mountain, something that is never shown nowadays in our maps. They just say the North Pole is a bunch of ice in the middle of an Arctic Sea. In his map, it shows that there's these whole island continents around the North Pole that don't exist on modern maps, and there's a magnetic mountain right at the middle. That doesn't exist on any map nowadays. So there's some interesting secrets in historic cartography if you look back at ancient maps. In fact, pretty much every map before the 1500s is a flat Earth map. This ball globe deception, this idea that we're on a ball, it's only been around for the past 500 years or so. Before that, pretty much every map in existence was a flat Earth map.
Why do we use the Mercator projection when it's proven that it's incorrect, it's false, and the correct one is the Peters projection map?
Yeah, so this is a much better projection, the Gall Peters, which has the continents, the sizing of them relative to one another and each other, uh, more precise. I still wouldn't say that's the right map than the Mercator, and we've known this for a long time. So why do they use that? And well, I would say the answer is that they're deceiving us, uh, regardless. Even the Gall Peters map is a deception, and I wonder about the azimuthal equidistant. I wonder about even the old flat Earth maps. Since we've been lied to so much, I'm not sure that we have a completely accurate map anywhere. Though I recommend looking at the Gleason's 1892 map and the Hamid's Air Age map. There are a few flat Earth maps that are very detailed. I'd like to see some modern cartographers take a look at this and see how much more detail we can get. But the flat Earth maps absolutely describe the Earth we're living on much better than any of these ball models.
Oh, absolutely. But the Peters projection, the reason why I brought that up, I think it's because anything south of the equator, based on the sphere, that shows bigger than the north should not be there. In other words, we want the north to always be better and bigger. And that's why when you see both maps, the Peters and the Mercator, you can see the Peters Africa looks huge. South America looks huge. You can fit the United States several times in Africa. And the other one, maybe just two times at the most.
Right. Why is that? Because lines of latitude south of the equator don't get smaller, they get larger.
Right.
Because we're not on a ball, we're on a flat plane. And so that's why in the Gall Peters projection, you see Africa and these other places in the southern hemisphere. They're actually huge. They don't want you to know that because that fits in with the flat model. Now, when you're trying to traverse around Antarctica like James Clark Ross, Captain Cook, and other early explorers tried to do, it took them 3 or 4 years and they traversed 50 to 70,000 miles. Where on the ball model, it should only be about 12,000 miles around Antarctica. It shouldn't take you that long to go around it. But like I said, it's the circumferential barrier around the entire Earth is Antarctica. So it takes years to get around it, and it's much bigger than at the equator. The equator would be 25,000 miles in circumference, they say in the ball model. Yet when you're trying to go around Antarctica, it's twice that size as it would be on a flat plane, not on a ball. And these early explorers, they often found they were going on ball projections as well, and they found themselves out of their reckoning more and more every day the further south they went. So since they're on a ball projection where they're assuming that lines of latitude are getting smaller and smaller as they go southward, in fact, they're getting larger and larger. I'm sorry, it's the space between lines of longitude is what I'm talking about. As you can imagine, it would come back in on itself on a ball, whereas it would just expand outwards from a flat plane. So the further south you get, you're going to get more and more out of your reckoning. Ships have actually crashed based on this, and it's like a big mystery why in the southern hemisphere is it so difficult to navigate. And they just chalk it up to harsh winds and sea conditions, and so that they must get off their reckoning based on the harsh seas. But it's really this, that they're following false projections, and so they're getting outside of their reckoning all the time.
Now the UN map. Why don't they include Antarctica?
Yeah, the UN flag and logo, it's definitely a flat Earth projection, but you'll notice there is no Antarctica anywhere. But there is a laurel wreath that goes around it. So symbolically, that wreath very well could be the Antarctic going around it. They've just left that off. I think it would probably be a bit too obvious. Actually, they have changed the UN map a couple times. The first UN logo was an exact copy of the azimuthal equidistant map, but they've changed it a little bit to make it look a little less obvious. So I think that's probably what they did with Antarctica as well, is they just turned that into the laurel wreath around it so that the insiders know. Just like they divided it into 33 sections. It looks like there's a bullseye over the Earth, over the flat Earth, and it's divided right up into the 33 sections. As you probably know, it's 33 degrees in Freemasonry, and so that's a sacred number in numerology, and they hold that number dear. So that's a little wink, wink, nudge, nudge to fellow Freemasons, but the general populace wouldn't know.
Now,
I think a
why
laurel
are,
wreath.
I'm
Go.
sorry, finish what you're saying.
Oh, sorry, just saying the Laurel Wreath Antarctica could be another wink wink to the insiders.
Right. And that number 33, as you said. Now, why are surveyors, engineers, and architects never required to factor the supposed curvature of the Earth into their projects?
Yeah, why is that? Surveyors, engineers, architects, they've written in magazines like the Earth Review magazine. We've got a bunch of them on record saying that they never have to factor in the supposed curvature of the Earth when making tunnels, bridges, canals, trains, laying train tracks. The supposed curvature of the Earth is never taken into account. And if there was curvature, it absolutely would have to be, and it would make their projects impossible. So they've commented on this. You can see in my book, The Flat Earth Conspiracy, or 200 Proofs Earth is Not a Spinning Ball, quotes from these guys saying how they never have to, and how their jobs would be much more difficult, if not impossible, if they did have to factor in such curvature.
Now, speaking of maps, why is most of the continent of Antarctica unmapped, in your opinion?
All right, so on the ball model, it's just this little continent on the bottom, yet in reality, it's all around us. So there's much more of it than we know. And how much there is to Antarctica, I don't know, and any independent person doesn't know, because we only have gotten as far as that, and nobody independently has had the privilege of going further southwards to see how far south you can actually go. They have a fake South Pole station set up that you can take little photo ops and go where they've got a flag and a little ball earth on top of a red and white barbershop pole set up, and they say that's the geographic South Pole like I talked about earlier. But you can't take a compass there and walk in a circle and prove that you're at the South Pole. And they'll tell you, well, yeah, this isn't the actual South Pole. The actual South Pole is a little somewhere else, indeterminable, that they don't know because it's constantly moving. So really what it is they've just set up a little place at an arbitrary point along the Antarctic ice and called it the South Pole. In reality, we don't know how far it goes. Perhaps the people who've set up the Antarctic Treaty, the government, the Freemasons, the one who've perpetuated this deception from the beginning, I'm sure they know how far it goes. Whether it ends in a dome and some sort of barrier, as ancient cultures have talked about, or if there's an edge, or if it's an infinite plane that just goes on forever, or if there's some other termination of the ice, is still a mystery at this point. But we know that Antarctica is all around us, and it's certainly much bigger than they show in their ball projections. So there's certainly more land there in Antarctica than we know. So that's another reason that they can't necessarily show us in the map. Even the flat Earth projections, they'll show the Antarctic circumference. We know what that looks like. We know all the cliffs, all the little ins and outs, but we don't know how far you can go south. So all the projections inevitably just go to the ice, show all the little imperfections in and out, the inlets and outlets, and then trace a circle around that. Whether that circle is the dome or whether that circle is arbitrary and it actually extends infinitely is still unknown at this time. And like we said, they've got this Antarctic Treaty, and this is surely why. Because if any independent explorer decides, I'm going to go to Antarctica and just set their course southwards and start walking, well, they're going to find the answer to this mystery. And it's that easy. But it's not that easy if they've got a treaty enforced by military ships patrolling the place, putting people in jail who try it. So it's a gauntlet that some brave explorer needs to run with a Ustream account. Just go for it. See what happens.
Exactly. Well, we have our own Dr. Brooks Agnew. He was trying to go to the North Pole first, and then he was going to go, I believe, to the South. And for some reason, he couldn't get that nuclear-powered Russian vessel that he was going to get. But Admiral Byrd, I'm sure you're familiar with his expeditions. He had several expeditions, and the last time it was after World War II. He was supposed to go for 2 months and had to return in 2 weeks. What do you know about his expedition in relation to the flat Earth?
Admiral Byrd supposedly went to the North Pole and Antarctica, and he wrote a diary about some strange happenings that supposedly happened to him while he was there, involving giants and UFOs and hollow Earth and going inside the Earth and a Nazi base in the Antarctic and other such things. However, Admiral Byrd was a Freemason, just like all of the people in NASA that started NASA, just like all of the astronauts, just like Newton, Copernicus, Kepler, and all the founding Pythagoras, all the founding fathers of the heliocentric spinning ball model have been Freemasons. So Admiral Byrd's testimony, and that's all we have is his testimony. There's literally no proof outside of this. I find completely suspect because he was a Freemason. So it's an interesting story. You can definitely read it and note it. But I'm definitely waiting for some proof on these claims because I don't want to go just on the hearsay of a Freemason like some flat earthers are willing to say that, well, Admiral Byrd said it, so it must be true. But just because a Freemason said it doesn't mean it's true, just like with the ball earth.
That's right. Let's move with the evidence, not with the rumor. Now, if the South Pole or Antarctica is a sheet of ice 360 degrees around us, has anyone done an experiment where two ships meet somewhere and then go in opposite directions around the sheet of ice and then meet on the other half of the circle? Do you know?
No, I don't think that has been done, nor has a north-south circumnavigation of the supposed globe ever been done. We've circumnavigated the Earth, but we've done it in an east-west, around the Earth fashion. So nobody has ever actually gone from North Pole to supposed South Pole and back around in an airplane or, in a ship. You couldn't do it anyway. But they've gone in airplanes and in ships around east to west, so they call that a proof of the ball earth, that they've circumnavigated. But really, you can do that on a flat plane as well, so that doesn't prove anything. They also say that on a ball, you should be able to go 10,000 miles in a straight line, take a 90-degree turn, go 10,000 miles, take another 90-degree turn, go 10,000 miles, and you should make a triangle over the sphere. Now, in one of their videos on YouTube, their popular ball earth videos, they claim that this is a proof of the ball. But this experiment's never been done either. They claim that, you go take 3 90-degree angles, 10,000 miles, and you'll be back where you started, proving that you're on a spherical, going over a spherical surface, not a flat one. A flat one, you'd have to take 4 90-degree turns to get back. But they've never actually done that experiment. Just like they've never actually done a north-south circumnavigation and recorded it. So, like I said with the Byrd testimony, any experiment that they claim is a proof, but they've never actually performed it and show us evidence, I'm not buying it.
Some people say that the Earth is an oblate spheroid, but take Neil deGrasse Tyson. I'm sure you hear this name all the time. He says the Earth is pear-shaped. If that's the case, why haven't we seen a picture of the Earth looking like a pear?
Yeah, they tell us that the Earth is a sphere, and they show us pictures of a sphere, of a circle. It's a perfect circle. And then they come out and they say, well, it's actually an oblate spheroid. Oh, what's that? Well, it's a sphere that's flattened at both poles, so it's more of an oval shape. Oh, all right, well then why do none of your pictures or videos show an oval-shaped Earth? And then Neil deGrasse Tyson, one of their spokesmen, he comes out again, and he says, well, it's actually bulges out south of the equator, as well as being flattened at the poles. So it's more pear-shaped. So now it's pear-shaped. So why are all of these official NASA photos and videos showing perfect spheres when it's actually an oblate spheroid or a pear-shaped spheroid? They can't get their story straight, and the reason they keep changing it is that to fit the model, they have to change the shape of the Earth. The reason they originally flattened it at the poles is because people have done experiments proving that the Earth is flatter than they say it is. So they'll just say, oh, well, that's just at that latitude that you took the experiment. It's a bit flat over there. But it does bulge out the way we say it does. And then, like we said, south of the equator is larger than north of the equator because lines of longitude just extend outwards. They don't contract back. So they concede that in their pair model. They say, well, it bulges out south of the equator. It's bigger south of the equator. Yeah, it is, because it's flat. But instead of admitting that, they just, make tweaks to their model as time goes on. That they say that the ball Earth tilts back 23.5 degrees. That's another tweak they made, because we can see Polaris, which is right over the North Pole, from 23.5 degrees south latitude. Shouldn't be able to see that on a ball. So they just tilt the Earth back, and then okay, now you can see it. Anything else? And so they come up with explanations in reverse like this, damage control, reverse engineered explanations, just to give excuses. Like I said, they're great at it. They come up with an excuse for everything that is presented to them as a difficulty to their model. But when you just break down their excuses time and time again, you start to see how they're just lying. They're just making stuff up so that to keep the model going. It doesn't make any sense. The more you actually look into it, you see that they're weaving a big myth. And we look into the flat Earth experiments and examples, you see that this makes sense. This is obvious. You can do this for yourself. These experiments have been done over and over again. Like I said, I have 200 proofs the Earth's not a spinning ball. On my forum, we've got many more proofs than that. I challenge you to find any, NASA or any ball believer to find 200 proofs that the Earth is a ball or spinning. They can't even give you 10 good. I mean, they can't even give you one, to be honest. I can debunk every single one. But, they can't even come up with fake explanations the way flat earthers can come up with real, legitimate explanations. The more you look into it, the more you'll see this. At first, everyone scoffs at flat earth. What the heck is that? Yeah, because you've never heard this before. All you've ever heard is that flat earth is ridiculous and the spinning ball is obvious. So that's how you're going to react. But I challenge you, you just look into this some more. You're going to shift. It's going to become exactly the opposite. You're going to scoff at this stupid spinning ball model, the idea that you've ever believed that this happens, and you're going to see how obvious it is that the Earth is flat and motionless, just as it appears to you, just as it has appeared to everyone throughout all of history.
Even President Obama ridicules it when he says, we don't have time for a meeting with the Flat Earth Society. But I found interesting, Eric, that we hadn't seen a NASA photo of the Earth since 1972, the last Apollo mission. We saw a few photographs, but years ago, something dawned on me that they had different pictures of the rotation. But what struck me as strange was that the clouds were exactly in the same position. And then recently, you probably saw it about 3-4 weeks ago, NASA came up with this new picture of the Earth having the moon going around it that looks so photoshopped to me. Did you see that?
Yes. They called it EPIC.
EPIC.
I forgot the anagram or whatever. It's EPIC stands for the name of this satellite that they claim is 1 million miles away, and it just sent them these photographs or whatever. I don't know, is it a photograph or a video? It's such a bad video you can't even tell what it is.
Oh, supposedly a video, yes.
Right, but it's just like a flip book of just pictures of this little gray ball moving over a blue ball. And anyone that's not completely brainwashed can see this is an image. This is a CGI, computer-generated image. It's not a video, and neither are any of their videos. Like you said, you look at any of these videos that they have of the Earth spinning, none of the clouds move, none of the clouds morph, and you can see way too much of the ocean and the Earth. If you actually go up in a plane or a hot air balloon, you notice there's clouds everywhere at varying altitudes, and so the Earth should be white, really, if their images were legitimate. But yeah, as you're saying, they're actually all computer done. They're not even that good. You look at them next to each other from back in the 70s up to nowadays. They all look totally different too. The shading of the water is different. The clouds is different. The image of the Earth has changed as CGI technology has changed. You can see it, the early 2000s, it looks like the Men in Black style. Nowadays, it looks like the Gravity Hollywood style. They update their ability as time goes on, but it never looks the same. In a recent one, I don't know if you saw, they put the word sex, S-E-X.
I did.
clearly in a cloud formation. So
Yes.
they're just laughing at us now. They're putting things out there for us to see. It, like you said, it's for the people with eyes to see. It's the wink, wink, nudge, nudge. So they're laughing at us.
And
But you know,
nobody questions, because that little quote unquote video of the Earth with the moon going around it, it's almost as if it's a bad crop of the moon placed there in an animated GIF, and you don't see the shadow of the moon as it passes in front of the sun.
it's terrible. And it gets millions of views, and every comment you see, people are like, amazing, thank you
Yeah.
so much. You know, our tax dollars well at work. And Neil Tyson will say something like, yeah, we brought you this image, and it only costs every American like $7 per year. That's it. It's like, yeah, I'll take my $7 back, and stop lying to us. They've taken trillions of our dollars uh, over the existence of NASA. It's like 30 billion just for the fake moon landings. And now they've got RASA and JAXA and all these other space organizations propping up all over the world. So they're fleecing their populations of tax money, billions and billions of dollars. And what are they doing with it? They're paying artists to make little CGI renderings and laughing at us and running away to the bank. So this is one of the biggest deceptions in history, and they're laughing their way to the bank as a result of it.
Well, we can go back to 2001 Space Odyssey. It took years for Stanley Kubrick to do that, and I think that he also had a big hand on the Apollo missions. But when I think of 1939, when Technicolor came along, wow, now you can go to the movie theater and watch these movies in color. And then 30 years later, the most sophisticated venture of humankind gives us second or third generation black and white. Come on now.
And then 45 years later, we still haven't gone back.
Exactly. And you would think that if we had been to the moon, there would be some commercialization of the moon. We would have space tourism. We would have people just going there and digging rocks from the moon to sell them at planet Earth, because we like to be venturers and business. Why is it that not more commercial, companies have said, you know what, you don't want to go there? We'll go. I don't know if you know who Jay Whitener is, but he told me that he and somebody else had a production company. They wanted to go and map in 3D the moon years ago. And he called a former friend from NASA and said, hey, by the way, I just want to let you know so that you know that we're having this rocket and we're going to go up and take, this footage of the moon. And allegedly, that man from NASA said, you're not going to the moon. You're never going to the moon. If you launch a rocket, we're going to shoot it out of the sky, and don't ever call me again. I don't know if you ever heard that.
I haven't. No, I just watched Jay Wheatner's new movie, Kalki. Have you seen that? Those
Yeah, absolutely. Avatar.
Yeah. No.
Now, a private rocket was launched last year. You probably know this, from the Nevada desert, 73 miles up. It had I think they broke a record. It had a few cameras, but unfortunately they were all fisheye, as you know. However, the one thing, Eric, that was noticed was that the moon was behind. Someone noticed the moon behind the rocket, and it plugged the time of launch and determined, using different computer programs and websites, that the moon was above Australia at the time. If we live in a sphere, it would be impossible to see the moon if at the time this rocket was launched, the moon was on the other side of the globe. What do you say about that?
Right. They tell us that the moon only circles around us once every month, when in actuality it circles over the Earth every 25 or so hours. It makes a complete revolution. So the sun and the moon, they're only a few thousand miles above the Earth, circling over and around it. Whereas they say that the sun is like 800,000 miles in diameter and 93 million miles away, and the moon is, however many 100,000 miles away and however many miles in diameter. And they say that exact size and distance makes them appear to us to be exactly the same size. But in fact, one is really, really big and really far away. One's really close and smaller, so it just appears that way. So they're telling us lies about the sun and the moon and the stars and the planets and everything literally in the heavens anyway. So the fact that we saw that is not at all strange from the flat Earth model, but it's inexplicable in theirs. just as is the fact that the moon goes right over and around us every day, not every month, as they claim.
Of course, if you ask NASA, they'll say, oh, no, that's just a lens reflection, of course. Now, the first thing people ask when confronted with flat Earth conversations is, how do you explain the Coriolis effect and the flat Earth?
So they say that in the North Hemisphere and the South Hemisphere, water and drains, toilets is going to go down in opposite directions, proving that the Earth is spinning and the spin is affecting the waters. In actuality, however, this is totally debunked by basins in one household going opposite directions. It really is based on the way that the water enters the basin and the way that it's shaped, which way it spirals down, and has nothing to do with the Coriolis effect. Coriolis effect very well could just be the ether winds moving around the flat Earth. If you look at a diagram of the ocean currents, winds, temperature, you'll see that it's on a globe model. It's going every which way. It doesn't make any sense. And you'll find videos on YouTube where they've projected on a flat model where it makes perfect sense. Everything goes around in an anti-clockwise motion perfectly around the flat Earth model, the azimuthal projection. Just like Polaris sits up over the North Pole and all the stars and the celestial bodies move anti-clockwise over us. Because that's what's actually happening, is that like they call it ether or call it a invisible web, there is a connection to all the stars, all the planets, everything that we see in the sky above us is moving anti-clockwise around Polaris. So this is just a fact of the plane we live on, that everything is turning this way. So as a result, this is where we're getting these weather patterns and everything, is from this constant turning motion. And it's actually turning constantly in the same direction, whereas on a ball projection, it's going every which way and doesn't make any sense at all. So the weather Coriolis effect makes more sense on a flat plane, and the Coriolis effect that they say is causing spinning drains, spinning water in drains, actually is a myth completely. It doesn't happen that way at all.
We have allegedly mapped the far side of the moon. Why not Antarctica if we have thousands of satellites?
Yeah. Why can we why can we travel to the moon where it's much colder and much hotter out there than it is in Antarctica? Yet they say we can't circumnavigate and fly directly over Antarctica because it's too cold for the planes. So, like I said, convenient excuses. They're in these flimsy little spacesuits out in space, claiming that they're in 2,000 degrees Celsius, or at nighttime it's hundreds of degrees below zero. They're claiming they're in these temperatures that they couldn't possibly be in. Yet meanwhile, they use the exact same excuse for why they can't cross the Antarctic, because it's too cold. So what is it?
What's up with us not having surveillance in the right places? For example, take the Pentagon on 9/11. The only surveillance video that we saw came allegedly from a gas station when it was probably the most protected building in the world. Why don't we have a real-time surveillance camera of the Earth spinning in real time as a ball in 2015?
Right. They show us the ISS cam. That's the closest thing they'll give you. And this is just one of their CGI balls with a little paneling thing to make you think that they're taking it from a space station out in outer space. And you watch the fake sun set. People have done many videos exposing how this is completely fake. So they do have something like that to appease us, but it's not real. You look at these ISS footage videos, and they're using a map projected onto a ball Earth. You can clearly see that this is not a video. You look at the layering, the texturing, just look at it with open eyes. You've been looking at these videos for so long now, assuming that they're real. And like I said, there's millions of views, the comments, oh, beautiful, amazing, stunning, look at the Earth. And so you think that these are, amazing videos of the Earth. Take a closer look. You're going to see that these are just amazing, stunning, beautiful CGIs. These are all done on computer. And some of the Hollywood stuff is better. You compare some of these ISS supposed videos of the spinning ball Earth to the movie Gravity that just came out. man, the movie Gravity got it a lot better. Pay attention. You'll see how much CGI is being passed off as reality nowadays.
I don't know if you know this, but the director of the movie Gravity was in a conference one day, and a reporter, and this is seriously, this is not humorous or a joke, the reporter asked Alfonso Cuarón, the director, Mr. Cuarón, how were you able to sustain spending so many months in the space stations filming the movie? And of course, the director laughed about it, and he kept answering the question. But even some of the reporters believed that the movie was filmed in space.
Right. Yeah, well, it's just like everybody now believing that that grainy black and white footage of the moon landing was actually filmed on the moon, even though, of course, it could have been filmed in a studio, you know. And have you heard that the original footage has now all been lost? So we can't even verify those.
That's original. Right. Supposedly it was found at a McDonald's somewhere. Hundreds of, come on, how much did it cost? $38 billion for us to go to the moon, and they lost the footage and the proof? Give me a break.
They've lost most of the blueprints for the lunar lander and all the vehicles. They've lost the data telemetry tapes that prove that the vehicles have actually traversed those hundreds of thousands of miles. So all the physical evidence is gone. Why? Oh, I wonder. Of course, if they can't show us this stuff, because then when it can be analyzed independently, it can be shown for the fraud that it is. So just like the Pentagon footage, why do we only get, like, at first we got nothing, then we got 5 frames with a little thing saying plane, but you couldn't even see a plane, you just see 5 frames of an explosion. Why is that? Well, obviously because they're lying to us, so they can only cover it up by saying things like, oh, the camera battery didn't work. Oh, we lost the tapes. Oh, sorry. So that's how they do it. Like I said, excuse after excuse after excuse. They never, no liar admits the lie. You just keep going with it, obviously, especially when you're getting paid billions of dollars of it and your entire career and reputation and hundreds of year deception is on the line. They're not going to come out and be like, you got us. You're right. Eric was right, guys. All right. It's flat. No, they're just going to keep going and keep making up excuses, and they've literally been doing it for 500 years. And that's why we've gone from a ball to an oblate spheroid to a pear. What's next, It's going to be an amoeba. It's an amoeba-shaped Earth next. They're going to have to make so many modifications to it. It's going to be like clay in a potter's wheel, throwing it against a wall, trying to answer all the flat Earth refutations.
And the problem is that most people don't ask questions. I remember years after the 9/11, I hate to say attacks, but the event happened when the newspapers' headlines came out and said, oh, we finally found a video that shows a plane crashing into the Pentagon. No pictures, nothing. It just read that. Most people just saw that. Oh, good. You see, we have the answer. Those conspiracy theories just go to sleep. Go back to sleep now. But we have to take a one and only intermission. We're just scratching the surface, folks. If this is the first time you've ever heard about this topic being discussed in the 21st century, well, you're in for a big surprise, because we have so much more when we return with Eric Dubay. And welcome back to Veritas. I'm Mel Fabregas. Delighted to be here with my special guest tonight, directly from Bangkok, Thailand, Eric Dubay. Eric, some people have emailed me these pictures of the bases in Antarctica, the research bases that are there, and they're showing what looks to be 2 suns. If we are on a flat Earth, and let's call ourselves a puddle, one of many puddles, could that other sun be another sun that belongs to another puddle, and because they're down there in the extreme, circumference of the Earth, they're able to see that?
That's one possibility for that explanation. Another is Rahu, which is another celestial body in Vedic astronomy that they said existed the same size as the sun and the moon. It's also been called the Black Sun. And this is the ancient explanation for eclipses. They claim that Rahu eclipses the sun and the moon, not as modern day they claim that in solar eclipses the moon eclipses the sun, and in lunar eclipses they claim that the shadow of the ball Earth eclipses the moon, causing that. This one actually is provably not true, however. They say that the sun lines up with the Earth just perfectly to cast the shadow of the Earth onto the moon like 3 billiard balls in a straight line. However, many times, over 50 times in the past 500 years, it's been recorded by the Royal Astronomical Society that the sun and the moon were both visible above the horizon at the same time during an eclipse, which means they couldn't have been not even close to in a straight line. They're almost next to each other. So this explanation of the shadow of the ball Earth going onto the moon is impossible for being what the eclipse is. They also use that as a proof of the ball Earth. They say, hey, see the shadow? It's a ball. But this is impossible. So you're not seeing the shadow of the ball Earth. It's not a proof of the ball. And in fact, a better explanation is this ancient explanation of the black sun, or Rahu, which occults the sun and the moon at certain points during the phase. There's an 18-year cycle that eclipses go through, and every 18 years it repeats. So you can predict eclipses based on this geocentric flat model with Rahu, as they've been doing for thousands of years. Nowadays, they claim to be predicting it based on the billiard ball, sun, moon, and Earth lining up. But as I said, this is not happening. So this is yet another lie. And this claims of seeing Nibiru or some other celestial body very well may be this translucent dark body, the black sun, since we're not told about it any time we see strange phenomenon and think it could be a second sun, it very well may be this one, the black sun.
And with all due respect to the late Zacharias Sitchin, anybody who wants to listen to his last interview, you can go to our websites right there. The fact that he had his office in Rockefeller Center in New York City makes you wonder if he's part of those cultural editors that continue to keep us in the dark. But Eric, you say the moon is self-illuminated. Why do we only see portions of the moon during the various moon phases?
Yeah, they say that the cause of the moon's phases is the reflected sunlight hitting it. But you can prove that the light of the moon is totally different from the light of the sun. The effect it has on foods and plants is different. The actual temperature of the light is different. So if you're in the sun, of course, in the shade, it's cooler than in the sunlight. But in the moonlight, it's cooler in the moonlight than it is in the shade. So if you go in the moon shade, temperature goes up. So it couldn't possibly be reflected sunlight, otherwise it would be warm, just like the sunlight is warm. So it's casting its own light. The phases are a function of the moon itself, and it's provably a translucent flat object, not a opaque ball as they claim the moon is. If the moon was a ball, first of all, you'd be able to see different faces from different areas on Earth. So if you're at the Arctic or the equator or the Antarctic, you should be seeing different features because you're looking at a different face of the moon from there. However, no matter where you are on Earth, you'll see exactly the same face, the same man on the moon, the same rabbit will always be there, but it'll be tilted 360 degrees at various inclinations because the moon actually turns like a wheel as it goes around us. And that's another proof they use of their ball model. They say in the north hemisphere, the moon is right side up, and in the south hemisphere, it's upside down. So that's proof that we're on a ball. But as I said, it's not so simple that it's just right side up in one hemisphere, upside down in the other hemisphere, but rather it's always turning. So you can find pictures of it at all inclinations, not just two opposite inclinations. So this is one proof that the moon is not a sphere. They say that the moon's a sphere and it rotates as well as the Earth, but since we only see the one face, their excuse is the moon rotates the opposite direction the Earth does, and it's perfectly synced so that when the Earth is moving and the moon is moving, we never see any other face. So another convenient explanation. But in reality, the reason we never see the dark side of the moon is because it doesn't exist. There isn't another side of the moon. It's just a translucent, it's not densely physical because you can see through it. There's been pictures taken of stars being seen right through the moon. And the Royal Astronomical Society has recorded stars and planets like Jupiter have been seen through the moon. And they're scratching their heads recording this, like wondering what they've seen. And this is on record back in the 1700s up until today. You can see things through the moon. On a clear afternoon, you can see the blue sky through a waxing or waning moon. You'll see part of the moon illuminated, and then part of it you'll see the blue sky right through it. Even some of the craters, as they call them on the moon, that's potch marks. Nobody knows exactly what they are. It's strange looking. Calling them craters, though, is a foregone conclusion because you don't know that that's what they are. Especially, as I'm saying, some of these supposed craters, you can see the blue of the sky through the crater. So it's obviously not something that's densely physical. You can see through it. You can't see opposite faces from different places. And if it was a ball can't reflect light either. The only way that the moon could reflect light like they say it is if it was a flat or a concave surface. A convex surface can't project light, reflected light, the way it's claiming that the moon does.
Now, Occam's razor for a moment. If you and I are born and raised by, say, an isolated tribe in the Pacific, and you and I look at the horizon around us, we would think the Earth was flat if nobody told us the opposite. And if you saw an eclipse and the sun and moon look exactly the same, you would come to the conclusion that the two objects are the same size, wouldn't you?
That's right, exactly. And you wouldn't come to the conclusion that you were moving either. They say that we're spinning 1,000 miles an hour, we're going around the sun 67,000 miles per hour. There's no way you would think of that because it's nowhere evident anywhere that we're moving. Instead, you'd look up and you'd see that the sun, moon, and the stars are all revolving perfect circles around us. And that geocentric common sense perspective is what you would assume the truth was, until some liar with a NASA logo on his shirt, a little forked snake tongue, if you notice, that's what the logo is. They come with their little forked snake tongue and they say, "Oh, silly peasant, you're not motionless with everything revolving around you. The sun is motionless and you're revolving around it, silly." So what they do is they set themselves up as the authority. That's what every liar does. That's why psychopaths, they get this thing called the duper's delight. They love to pull a fast one on you. Not only is it fun for them, it's hilarious for them to pull this biggest of all jokes on people. It also sets them up as the authority. So not only do we give them all of our money for these fake CGI pictures and whatnot, we also go to them like they're the priests of metaphysics as well, because they're the only ones who can peer into the universe and tell us exactly what's going on here. So people like Carl Sagan and Neil deGrasse Tyson, in actuality, they're just Freemasons lying to you, stealing your money, but you think that they're like the priests of science telling you knowledge of the universe that nobody but them has access to. So they set themselves up as the authority by telling this biggest of all lies, and then everybody has to ignore their common sense and their own experience and experiments and go to these guys and ask them what the truth is, and they just feed you a bill of good lies all the time. And that's where we're at today. We've all been brainwashed with these excuses of why the Earth's curving and spinning and all this nonsense. Like you said, if you were left to your own devices, if you were born in some tribe somewhere, there's no way you'd ever come up with this heliocentric ball idea. The Earth is clearly flat and motionless to anyone that's ever walked the Earth and not heard a NASA spokesperson.
Speaking of the Earth moving so fast, when you look at a quiet pond, the water is so calm, you drop a pebble, and you see the rings start circulating wide as if there's no movement around us. And this leads me to the next question. The tides. Why low and high tide happening only in the ocean and not in lakes or streams?
Right. So water is another great proof of the flat Earth and disproof of gravity. So water, the natural physics, is to always find and remain level. If water is contained somewhere and let go, it will flow in all directions to find the easiest way to find its own level again, and then it'll remain still. So how is it possible that all of the oceans on the Earth are actually curved bodies of water curving around the Earth like this? That's not the natural physics of water to do that. They claim that gravity does this, but they can't show you any example of water gravitized around some ball and just sticking there the way they claim it does. And they also claim that the gravity of the moon somehow causes the ocean tides to lift up towards the moon, and that's what's causing the tides, as you said. But like you said, why are not the seas and rivers and lakes and other inland waters, why are they not similarly affected? Why aren't those bodies of water having tides and being lifted towards the gravity of the moon? Well, obviously it's because this explanation is bunk, just like every other explanation they give us. It's impossible that tides are caused by the moon's gravity, otherwise all water would be similarly affected. The reason it's not is because gravity doesn't exist, and this is a nonsense explanation.
Now, let me ask you about, and this might be a left field question, so I'm okay if you don't know what to say. Let me ask you about ancient maps for a moment. You may know that Christopher Columbus, Cristobal Colon, his real name, was not an Italian fisherman from Genoa, Italy. He, in fact, was a Sephardic Jew from Catalonia, Spain, who had to hide the fact he was Jewish because that same year, in 1492, Jews were being kicked out of Spain. So do you think he had an ancient, of course he lied in order to get the funding from the kingdom. Do you think he had ancient maps in his possession?
Right, absolutely. It's a huge lie that ancient civilizations never interacted with each other before Columbus, or that we never knew that there was a whole other continent out there. This knowledge was certainly suppressed, and it was kept to the royal class and the aristocracy. But Columbus, of course, he knew, and there's no way that that he, the story that he was trying to find India, and they to this day they still call Native Americans Indians because of because he was expecting to find India. I mean, what a stupid story that we hang on to this very day. There's been paintings of white men. There's been symbols like the cross and swastika and other ancient symbols have been found. The Buddha, sculptures of Buddha have been found in America. So the languages, you name it, there's inexhaustible proof that the East and West hemispheres knew about each other and had interacted for thousands of years before Columbus. There may have been the Dark Ages. There may have been a time when there was limited interaction, followed by this new breaking out they talk about. But as far as truly ancient civilizations, they were worldwide.
And coincidentally, right on our website, we have a blog entry titled, "Where Did Chief Joseph Get His Mesopotamian Tablet?" A gift that he gave, let's see, one of the generals when he came to America. And how did he get that? It's an artifact dated back to 2042 BC. So obviously the Assyrians, the Babylonians, had interactions with this world. The pyramids, all of a sudden, the pyramids popped at the same time, and they more or less had the same architecture style, when we in fact did not have any kind of interaction, and we had to believe that Christopher Columbus discovered or rediscovered or actually opened the route from Europe to America.
Right. Yeah, there's pyramids all the way from South America to India to China, huge stone obelisks and megaliths that we couldn't make today are found all over the world. Yet we're assuming that these cultures never had any connection. They all independently came up with this technology so advanced that we can't replicate it today. I doubt it. I think it's more likely that ancient civilizations were very evolved and they were worldwide. They communicated, and we have since devolved while been being told that we're the pinnacle of evolution and that your iPhone is the best thing that's ever existed.
Not only that, but I had a chat with the Dogon tribe years ago, and they get mad when you tell them, when you see Ancient Aliens on TV. Which, by the way, folks, find out who owns the History Channel, and then you'll know what I'm saying here. But they get mad when anybody says, "Oh, they must have been built by aliens." When in fact, I think we had a very, very smart civilization, perhaps a universal language, a universal mind, thousands of years ago. Something happened, and now we just can't replicate what they did, even with today's technology.
Right. Our wise ancient human heritage is so removed from us now that it's alien. We think of, the pyramids and the megaliths and all these things being so beyond us that they are alien to the human race. But this could be just that we've devolved and adapted so far away from how our ancient ancestors were that it's become alien to us. That doesn't mean that humanity had to have been visited by some other species to be able to construct the kind of things that we used to. It just means that our consciousness may have shifted and we've gone more towards metal technology, say, than internal consciousness technology. People of the past, for instance, in a Mithraeum, an ancient temple to Mithra, they looked like a modern Catholic church with pews and an altar and the priest at the front gives you communion. But in a Mithraeum, you get sacred mushrooms and oils, and then you lay down in these saltwater tubs. So the pews are like saltwater tubs. They're all connected, and you have a midnight mass. That's where this comes from. And there are holes cut in the ceiling over each of the tub. So everyone is ingesting a hallucinogenic, psychedelic, entheogenic substance. And then for thousands of years this existed, they said they communally, astrally traveled to the stars through those holes in the ceiling. So they used sensory deprivation by using these saltwater tubs and psychedelics to induce an out-of-body experience. And by doing it collectively, they said they were collectively able to travel to the stars, and they had communication with these astral beings, astral meaning star beings, aliens. So in thousands of years ago, we have whole religious sects, cults, dedicated to going out of your body and traveling to the stars with this type of internal consciousness technology and having interactions with spirit beings, aliens, whatever you want to call them. These same beings that shamans, ayahuasqueros in the Amazon claim to see now. They'll do paintings and they'll show you UFOs and beings like Nordics and reptilians and greys coming out of these things. And they say these are the beings, the astral beings on an interdimensional plane that they're seeing when they take these entheogens. So the whole alien extraterrestrial idea actually has been around for thousands of years, but not in a physical sense, like you get in a physical metal craft and try to go to another planet, but rather an internal technology where you can separate your spirit, your consciousness from your physical body, and upon doing so, direct your consciousness towards the stars, and then be able to literally travel there and talk to beings that are from there. So if this is possible, and I've experienced things that are similar to this, and I've had friends that have experienced things like this, if it's possible to use these, plant technologies or these things like sensory overload, sensory deprivation to separate your spirit and communicate with other beings, well, this is an advanced technology that almost doesn't exist anymore today. Almost nobody knows that it exists at all. The few people that do are somewhere in the Amazon. They have no idea that the Earth is supposed to be a spinning ball with extraterrestrial planets and aliens visiting us from them. They'd tell you now, man, just drink this ayahuasca. You'll see them. It's a totally different phenomenon.
As opposed to here in the United States, where all those plants are illegal. Makes you wonder that they don't want you to start looking outside the box.
Right. And DMT, the most powerful psychedelic on Earth, is actually naturally secreted in our pineal glands. So a lot of people will have a full-on DMT trip in the middle of the night. They won't even know what's going on. They'll think they're being abducted by aliens or something, or see UFOs. And in reality, they've just had an endogenous DMT trip. they've experienced the same thing that those ayahuasqueros in the Amazon are experiencing without knowing that there's been a drug being taken. So that's another thing, as well as I think the government has seen photos of flying, like planes with a flying saucer appendage to make them look like they're a saucer, but they're really just a plane. So between Hollywood and these government crafts, I think they're trying to turn this internal, interdimensional entity UFO phenomenon into a extraterrestrial physical phenomenon. They want you to think it's nuts and bolts, so you can knock on it and hear an echo, whereas the actual technology is internal. It's consciousness based.
Well, I'm so glad you mentioned DMT. Folks, listen to my interview with Dr. Rick Strassman, the spirit molecule. He's the only doctor in New Mexico, actually, who was able to bring this to academia. He tried DMT with his control group, and the findings were incredible. Some of the people went with one was a doctor and then changed careers because of what he found there, and now it's an incredible story. But what about planets? What if we are on, and this is the part that to me was difficult for me to disembrace from Eric, when I see these alleged circles from a telescope and you see Saturn with the beautiful rings around them and Jupiter, I would think, okay, if I'm seeing all these planets around, then we must be around. Isn't this the most difficult to explain?
Yeah, that's another supposed proof of the ball Earth is they say, well, all the other planets are spheres, so the Earth should be a sphere. So first of all, Earth is a plane, not a planet. You just add a T on the end, and now they claim that this word, which means flat, that's what plane means, now they claim you add a T and it means a big ball spinning in space. So everyone says, oh, see, it's a planet. So Earth's a planet. So this is just add a T to the end of the word, and people are ready to buy on the model. And the other thing they've done is given us CGI pictures and videos of Jupiter and Mars and Venus and all the other planets, and they're spinning spheres. But the planets have been known for thousands of years as wandering stars. If you look out tonight at the planets, you can't tell the difference between what they call stars and what they call planets. They all just look like little dots of light in the sky. That's another interesting point. If planets are just terrestrial terra firma, as they say, why are they shining so just as brightly as stars, which they claim are suns? Another interesting side point. But anyway, the wandering stars are called so because their motions are not relative to each other like the other constellations stay fixed. The wandering stars kind of wander around the heavens. So they're no different than the other stars except for their relative motions. But in NASA videos, they'll show you a star looks like a big nuclear furnace of sun, and they'll show you the planets look like whatever. They are all different, but they're all balls. Through an amateur telescope, the best telescope you can get, all the planets just look like a circle of light. The rings around Saturn just look like a halo of light. If you type into Google or even on NASA's official website, real planet footage, actual footage of the planets, something like this, you won't find any. It's all CGI. There is no actual footage of planets. They're just lying to you once again. So if you look out in a telescope, you look at the planets yourself, you'll see that they're barely different from stars. That, Mars, it's just a little circle with a little red tint to it, and there's no shading or anything that would suggest that it's a sphere. Yet when you look at the Hubble telescope show you Mars, it's clearly a sphere. The shading, everything's all in clear view. But again, the Hubble doesn't exist. It's just a CGI image, and they're claiming it's being taken from some advanced telescope that's floating around in outer space and sending them images back with their million-mile internet. This million-mile internet, that's what they claim that they send this epic satellite footage back from 1 million miles away. They've got internet that works at 1 million miles.
Wait a second. This is another one, right? We see our Milky Way galaxy so beautifully depicted in these pictures. But the first thing that I think of is, when did the camera get there?
Right?
Nobody's questioning that.
They'll show you a picture of the galaxy and all these stars, and they'll put a little arrow and say, "You are here," some random thing. You can do a Google image search of that, and you'll find the "You are here" thing look totally different in every image.
But wouldn't, if, okay, let's say that from here to the next, I believe is Alpha, what's the name? No, Alpha Centauri. I'll find the other one. The closest galaxy to us, Alpha Proximus, I believe it is. Anyway, it's how many light years? 4 point some light years away. So if, let's say, it's 1 light year away from us, or 10 light years away from us, and we had this camera that I don't know how he got there to be able to do a selfie on the galaxy, how many light years would it take to get back to us? Wouldn't it be several generations down the road that would be receiving that? Therefore, it's impossible that that picture was even taken?
Right? Absolutely ridiculous. Just like all their other explanations, but they need it to make it fit. So the closest star has to be 4.2 trillion light years away, 25 trillion miles away, to make their faulty math fit, because we don't see parallax. If we're actually moving 200 million miles through space in 6 months of time from one side of the sun to the other side of the sun, as they claim, then as Danish astronomer Tycho Brahe said back in the 1600s when this model was first being introduced, he said, well, you'd see parallax. If we're supposedly moving hundreds of millions of miles around the sun, then the stars relative to each other should change. But they don't. They stay stuck in their constellations year after year, century after century. They are, exactly the same. So it's impossible that, as in their model, we're actually spinning around the sun's spinning around the galaxy spinning around the universe. If that was the case, the night sky should never look the same 2 nights in a row, especially not 2 years in a row or 2 centuries in a row. The night sky should be wildly different, and the positions of the stars relative to one another should all be wildly different. The constellations shouldn't be able to exist. We shouldn't be able to make these constellations and stories for thousands of years about their revolutions over us if that's what was actually going on. The reason the constellations stay fixed is because they are fixed, and they're moving over us in a circular anti-clockwise pattern. And the reason why they have to say the closest one is 25 trillion miles away is because they say we're going 200 million miles around the sun. So they'll show you these huge formulas with math equations there's no way anyone's going to understand. And the math fits. See, as long as the stars are 25 trillion miles away, you can go 200 million miles and the relative position will seem the same because it's negligible. It's so much bigger. So that's why they come up with these ridiculously huge distances and numbers, is so that the math works in their model and so that the numbers are just so big that you can't question it. You're never going to get there. They're never going to get there either. But they can lie to you and give you CGI and you'll believe it. So,
oh, by the way, it was Andromeda, the closest galaxy to us. But when I heard this, that we're actually steady and we're basically the center, I felt a little bit ethnocentric, a little bit arrogant to say that we are. Is it bad to feel this way?
Yeah, we've definitely been brainwashed not to feel this way.
Mm-hmm.
They tell us that we're just, they say there's 1 septillion planets that they've discovered. So there's billions and billions, trillions and trillions of planets, and Earth is not special. And they just found Earth 2.0. Did you find that? A couple of months ago,
yes.
They came up with some new planet they found, which mysteriously looks like CGI once again, and it's got water, and it looks like Earth, and it could sustain human life. And so this is what they want you to think. They want you to think you're not special. They want you to think you're an accident. That's what this Big Bang non-God cosmology is all about.
Well, isn't a Big Bang the equivalent of you and I throwing a chalk on a board and expecting that the word God would appear?
Right. Yeah, it's the equivalent of having a huge explosion take place, and when the dust settles, everything you see on Earth is here. It's the equivalent of seeing a laptop computer in the middle of the forest and assuming that it just came there by accident for no reason, and no intelligence, no consciousness was involved in its creation. That's part of this big deception. That's what they want you to think. They've actually got a huge segment of the population believing that the entire Earth, the entire physical universe comes from nothing, and consciousness, intelligence somehow evolved out of the random accident. So obviously, we're living in an intelligently designed place here. Obviously, consciousness had to pre-exist the physical universe for the beautiful, complex, diverse physical universe to even come into existence at all.
Thought precedes matter.
Absolutely. And that's what all religious and spiritual systems throughout history have said this, but the new science religion says the opposite. The new science religion says matter comes first and thought comes out of that somehow. Stupid matter evolves thought and intelligence out of it. But you can see the beauty of nature, the complexity of your internal, emotional, and intellectual life. There's no way that just happened as a random explosion. And
the golden mean, the Fibonacci sequence everywhere.
Absolutely. It's not only is design intelligent, it's so intelligent that our human mind can't possibly comprehend it. So instead of admitting that and being a lowly human created by a highly intelligent creator, the new science religion lets you think that you're the pinnacle of evolution, you're a god, you're the best thing that ever walked, the universe, and that God doesn't need to exist whatsoever. So that's the metaphysical angle that this whole conspiracy is attacking us at. It's making us think, like you said, we're not special. And when somebody presents you with the idea that, hey, you're actually the center point of the universe, everything in the cosmos revolves around you, the Earth and us humans particularly, the most intelligent of the intelligent designers' designs, we are special.
Now, let me speculate for a moment. Let's say you and I are mice, and we're dropped in a cage or a glass container. The first thing we do is look for the exits. But after a while, we give up, and this is our habitat. Well, you have all these animals in certain reserves in Africa, and they stay within those parameters. They start looking, and when they find out that they can't escape, they just give up and they coexist, if you will. But in our case, if we live on a flat Earth and there are other puddles out there, it's innate in us to be able to find that exit. Because let me speculate here for a moment. We discuss the alien theory all the time. What if instead of extraterrestrials, we have interterrestrials coming from, instead of many light years away, coming from just a few thousand miles away from other puddles, and maybe those civilizations have evolved enough, and what we see in the sky, sometimes reported by thousands of people, are simply tourists taking a look at us and going back home, and we just simply are not allowed to visit them. That's just my speculation. What do you say about that?
Yeah, that's another possibility. If the Earth is infinite, then there could be other places beyond the Antarctic ice. Like I said, we don't know, so it's open to speculation. However, I tend to lean towards the model that the ancients talked about, which is that the aliens are actually astral beings from the stars, and that they're interdimensional. It's more of a consciousness-based thing than an extraterrestrial physical thing from some other puddle pond on the infinite flat plane. I tend to think that it's probably an enclosed system of some sort based on the movement of the stars. If it was an infinite plane, the movement of the stars would have to have a new explanation. And that these beings are not physical as they've been presented to us by Hollywood and these government UFO crafts and stuff. I think they're non-physical. They may have physical properties or be able to manifest physically in some way, but I think their nature, just like our inherent nature, is non-physical. It's consciousness-based.
I just believe more because of all the people that I've spoken to who have said that they have seen them manifest physically in physical craft. I lend more credence to the fact that if we have other puddles, that they may be coming around these puddles as opposed to 20 light years away, which to me, of course, it's beyond our comprehension. Seems like an impossibility.
That's true. Yeah, I would definitely buy the puddle theory over the extraterrestrial bottles theory.
Now, why are citizens of our country flying over oceans without the safety net of GPS, G for global? Without the safety of GPS, of course, no one knows where we are. And the GPS system was built by the U.S. Department of Defense. It has a huge deliberate gap in the southern hemisphere only. Why? I'm concerned about my loved ones and my fellow citizens, Eric.
Right. Now, why is it called GPS and not EPS, Earth positioning?
Mm-hmm.
Just another subtle indoctrination into the globe. What was your question? Why is there?
No, that I'm concerned that if we are traveling via air in the southern hemisphere, GPS all of a sudden, boom, disappears, and we can't track the people.
Yeah, some of the flights in the southern hemisphere, like when they go over the oceans, for some reason, the GPS just shuts off.
That's right.
This could be because there are no satellites and it's just ground-based. So there's certain places in the southern oceans that don't have towers that can reach them. That's one possibility. The other possibility is that they just don't want this to be exposed. And if you see how long it takes flights to traverse the southern hemisphere and the paths that they're taking, where they're actually coming up into the northern hemisphere and then back down to the southern hemisphere, because what they're really doing is just taking a straight shot across the flat Earth instead of going, around the ball as they claim they're doing. This is another reason. So it could be because they're having technological problems making the thing go all the way over the flat Earth, or it could be because they just don't want the deception to be exposed. So as a result, like you said, they're putting your loved ones in danger so that their conspiracy doesn't become in danger.
Here's another thought to ponder. We know that governments really don't rule. The corporation rules. Let's pick the number one industry in the world, oil. Let's pick one, ExxonMobil, whatever. Wouldn't they have gone down to Antarctica to start drilling or finding more resources? You think wealth is being hidden?
Right. Yeah. There's obviously more land down there than we've been told, so there's more land being hidden. If Admiral Byrd is to be believed, it's a gold mine down there of natural resources that corporations would certainly want to go down and invest in. But we've got these Arctic and Antarctic treaties that have been signed so that they're not allowed to do so. But that begs the question, then why have these things been signed, and why aren't they going down there anyway and just saying, screw the treaty? There's got to be something big there. I mean, like you said, that it's patrolled. There's military vessels that won't let you go. Brooks Agnew, like you said, couldn't go. Rodney Clough, he's a hollow earther, tried to go to the North Pole. He got turned around by military vessels. So they want to keep you in the middle of the flat Earth. They don't want, or the middle latitudes. They don't want you to go to the very middle, the center, the North Pole. And they don't want you to go to the edges, Antarctica. They keep you in the middle ring, as it were, the Middle Earth of the Lord of the Rings. It's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
There's a mountain in that, the latest Lord of the Rings movie, and that's where they rule from. So the North Pole would obviously be, if it's at the center of the flat Earth, the most strategic location to own. Just like in the Lord of the Rings, the one ring to rule them all would be the central ring, and the outer ring, they keep us from that. And then the middle ring between the central and outer rings, that's where we're allowed to go. We're like the mice in the lab, like you said, and what they've done is they've put us in a maze. They've put television screens all around the mice, showing them that their prison has no walls. It's a ball. You can just keep going around it. And so the mice don't even think to try to find the edge, because there isn't one. They don't try to think to find the inner or outer extremity, because there isn't one. You're on a sphere.
Just give us bread and circus and we'll be happy.
Every point is equal to every other point, so there's no point that encourages exploration more than any other. So it's ingenious what they've done there. And then if any intrepid free thinkers get beyond their propaganda and actually try to traverse into the inner or outer rings, they've got those guarded by a heavy hand. So first they've got the soft method by brainwashing you, then they've got the hard method by physically enforcing the boundaries. So they don't have to physically enforce the boundaries from 99.9% of the population, because they're totally hypnotized by the model they've been presented with.
Because they know that if we find out, we know that if you tell a lie once, all your truths become questionable. But again, talking about the corporation, if we went to the moon in 1969, logic tells me that moon travel would have been commercialized, and by 75, 85, or 1995, trips to the moon would have been a reality. It hasn't happened. This would be exploited by the highest level. That's how business works. But if in 6 months from now, Eric, the Earth is on the other side of the sun, shouldn't we be seeing a different set of stars than the ones we see today? 6 months prior wouldn't be visible because they would be behind the sun. How is it possible that we see the same stars when we're on the other side of the, 6 months from now?
Yeah. And not only that, but then 6 months from then, we're not just back to the same spot, like they're kind of trying to claim, because they say that we're also spinning through the galaxy and through the universe. So, there's so many spiraling contradictory motions going on that the night sky should never be the same twice. Even after a full year rotation, now the whole solar system is supposed to be at a different point in the universe. So why is it that you can literally put a mark in your backyard, set up a telescope, and watch the meridian of a star going across? 6 months later, it will go across the exact same meridian line. 6 months later, once again, nothing changes. We haven't moved at all. And that's the reason. It doesn't fit their model whatsoever. If we were really going through all these contradictory motions, you shouldn't be able to film star trails at all. The star trails should be going not in circles, but in some lopsided shape because of the many spiraling motions that are being undergone. But in reality, you can point your camera towards the North Star, and every star goes in perfect circles around it because it's the stars that are moving, not us.
Do you see I'm sorry, finish your statement.
If we were moving, you'd have to see through the ball, Earth, for part of the rotation, to see the stars through, like, for instance, south of the equator, you can still see Polaris. But on a ball model, you'd have to be looking through the bulge of the Earth up into the sky to be able to see it. So it doesn't fit in their model. I mean, in their model, the sky is actually in every direction. So if you saw some crazy homeless guy digging a hole and you asked him what he was doing, and he said, I'm trying to find the sky, that's not crazy based on what they're telling you. That's legitimate. You should be able to dig down long enough and get to more sky. Right? But we all know that the sky is up and the Earth is down. There really is an up and down in nature. They're trying to claim that everything's relative. We're on a ball, so there is no up, really, and that the sky is both up and down and side to side. It's everywhere. And, they say that there is no up and down and that gravity just pulls things to the center. So someone in Australia, even though they're supposedly hanging upside down on a ball, gravity sucks their feet in, and the sky above their heads, the reason it's slightly different than the sky above someone's head at the North Pole is because the sky is around them 360 degrees. But in fact, the sky is only above us. And the reason you see slightly different stars is because your perspective isn't infinite. You can't, if you're at the North Pole, Polaris is directly above you. You look straight up, it's right there. Now you go southwards from there, and you look behind you, and you'll notice Polaris is slowly going down on the horizon. Just like anything that goes away based on perspective, starts when it's right over you and tends towards the horizon until it gets beyond your view, and then it's disappeared. But that doesn't mean that it's now like in some other area of the 360-degree space. It's still above you in the sky. It's just gone beyond your perspective. Same with the sun. People say, but I see the sun set and it looks like it's just going down under the horizon. How do you explain that? Again, it's perspective. The sun is not going down under the horizon. You can see when the sun is setting, oftentimes clouds high above the sun are being lit from above, and you can see shadows from above, yet the sun is below the cloud. Why is that? Because the sun's not below the cloud, of course. The sun is above the cloud, but it's retreated so far off into the distance that just like lamps on a street, they get smaller and smaller as they go away from you. They tend towards the horizon. They're not actually getting shorter. They're just seeming that way, and the sun is not actually setting and going below the horizon. It just seems that way as it gets further and further away from you.
And what about when you see a cloud and you see the rays coming from that cloud only, but none of the others? And we're allegedly 92.7 million miles away from the sun. Shouldn't the entire sky be showing the clouds showing the rays?
That's right. So if the sun is 93 million miles away, then all the rays of sunlight should be hitting the Earth at exactly the same angle. Yet you can see, like you said, rays coming from a cloud dispersing in like 60-degree patterns and showing that the light source must be very close, just above the clouds. And their explanation for this, they call them crepuscular rays. They say, oh, well, it's this phenomenon where the light hits the cloud and somehow it disperses and makes it look like it's coming from a center point right above the clouds, but it's actually 93 million miles away. Trust us, trust us.
Absolutely. And folks, if you don't want to entertain the flat Earth, note how I don't say believe. I say entertain, but at least question that if Antarctica is just barren land, just ice as far as the eye can see, why are there so many international laws preventing you from crossing? I mean, honestly, if it was just pure ice, we probably would be dead if that's what really is there. But if it was me, I would say, Mel, Eric, have at it. Go there, camp, do whatever you need to do. But I wish, Eric, with all these GoFundMe campaigns that you see on Facebook on a daily basis, if we put everybody together, do you think that we could create an independent institution that allowed scientific research by independent researchers in Antarctica?
Absolutely. As this deception spreads, people are going to create these kind of organizations. People are going to do experiments. People are going to send balloons with cameras. People are going to fly there. People are going to sail there. Absolutely, it's going to happen. As this gets out, this is the truth, and it is getting out exponentially right now. The flat Earth is going crazy. If you haven't heard about it, I don't know where you've been. So in time, this is definitely going to happen. At the moment, it's still such a ridiculed idea that no, at the moment, I don't see such a thing happening. But in the very near future, absolutely. And once you go flat, there's no going back. Once you've seen the evidence, once you know that the Earth is flat, like you said, people believe they're on a spinning ball. I don't believe I'm on a flat, motionless plane. I'm aware that I'm on a flat, motionless plane. I've seen the evidence. I've debunked all the supposed proofs I was taught in school that I'm on a spinning ball. So it's not a belief-based thing. It's an evidence-based thing. They claim that they're doing science with a capital S at NASA, but they're really doing capital P pseudo-science and indoctrinating you into a bunch of excuses like crepuscular rays to tell you why the sun is clearly just above the clouds and not 93 million miles away. They tell you the Earth's leaning back 23.5 degrees to explain why you can see Polaris. They say it's pear-shaped to explain the southern anomalies. They'll give you excuse after excuse. As long as you're willing to listen to these liars, they'll keep lying to you, just like any liar. They're not going to...
And their science has become dogmatic, almost like religion. But don't you think that the goal should be to get there? We can talk about a dome, a firmament, all we want, but I think the first thing is to go beyond Antarctica first in an expedition in order to prove this, don't you think?
And the North Pole. Like I said, they're keeping us from both of these areas. They don't want us to go to the North Pole. They don't want us to traverse as far south as we can. So they want to keep us in the middle. Don't go too far north. Don't go too far south. So I would say, do it. When your parents say what not to do, what do you want to do even more? When someone tells you you can't do something, what do you want to do even more? So as people figure this out, I hope that exploring, adventurous spirit does come out in humanity, and we decide to see this for ourselves. Because yes, once we have some video proof of some of this, it'll come out much quicker than with these, experimental proofs. We have to take some time to look into the experiments, the Ares failure and the different scientific experiments that have proven that the Earth is geocentric. Once we have video proof, say, of a dome, or of a magnetic mountain at the North Pole, or of Rahu eclipsing the sun, or of any of these natural phenomenon that go against their mythological spinning ball explanation, uh, you know, it's dying. The model's dying. The more proofs we get, the quicker it dies.
I mentioned Dr. Judy Wood at the beginning of the interview. She has a doctorate in interferometry, and I know you discussed the Michelson and Morley experiment, the Michelson interferometer. So I wonder what Dr. Judy Wood would say about this. Can you just quickly summarize what that experiment was about?
Right. Yeah, you mentioned Judy. I like Judy Wood's work as well. She's much like myself in that she's into the physical evidence. Some researchers, quote unquote, will take the testimony of Freemason Admiral Byrd and they'll create a whole, flat Earth series based on this testimony and a whole website claiming that we found a dome because Admiral Byrd apparently did. Actually, Admiral Byrd didn't even say so. It's all his speculation. You might know which flat earther I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. So to me, I'm more into physical evidence like Judy Wood is. And that's why people are against her, just like people in the flat earth community are against me. Because the shills, the controlled opposition that's in the 9/11 movement, they don't want you to look into physical evidence and the kind of things that Judy Wood's talking about.
So you know the story.
Absolutely. Just like the controlled opposition in the flat earth movement, they don't want you to talk to me.
The best way to control the opposition is to lead it ourselves, Lenin.
And they've been doing it. Exactly. They have the Flat Earth Society all set up with their controlled opposition, fake explanations for everything that turns people off from the Flat Earth because they give incorrect explanations for things. They have people like Mark Sargent, who I was just talking about, who come in to obfuscate and muddy the waters and throw in hologram moons and other nonsense to make the Flat Earth subject seem crazy to neophytes. And they won't talk about certain issues like the Holocaust or the Jews or Freemasons, and they try to pin it just on NASA. It's only NASA. Don't look behind NASA at the fact that it was all Freemasons who started NASA and started the whole ball earth deception. And don't look behind Freemasonry and see that it's Judaism that started Freemasonry from the get-go. So who's actually behind the spinning ball model? The Jews. And this is the main thing they don't want you to know, and this is the main thing I'm demonized for, and the reason why I'm a pariah flat earther, but I'm also the only leading flat earther because all the others are shills that won't tell you the real truth. They're just going to get to a certain point, honeypot and gatekeep you there, and then throw in some hologram moons and other nonsense to throw off neophytes. They're not going to take you to the actual culprits, the actual Jews and Freemasons who started this up from the get-go, because they know it's coming out, and they're fine with throwing NASA under the bus once this gets out, but they don't want you to go to the true seat of power, the true pinnacle of the capstone, the Jewish Freemason power, and they know that that's what's going to happen if I'm the one that exposes it, because I'm the only one exposing who's doing it.
Of course, and you're called anti-Semite. You say, oh, the sky is blue. Oh, you must be anti-Semite, but that doesn't take away the fact that the sky is blue.
Does it? I think the JDL might have a different opinion of that. Yeah, the term like anti-Semite, conspiracy theorist, flat earther, Holocaust denier, they come up with these to pigeonhole researchers so that instead of looking into it, they can just say a term like this and have a whole media, machine to parrot this term and to say it in hushed tones like you're someone who should never be listened to, and it's a position that should never be considered. And the Jews are victims. They were, the Holocaust. Everyone just don't criticize them. Okay, if you do, you're anti-Semite, right? You're not anti-Jew. You're anti-Semite, which is another.
Then you don't like Arabs or what's the other language? The dead language, Aramaic. So you're against all of them, not just Jews.
That's it. Well, anti-Jew is just to the point. Yeah. Right. They don't want you to know what's actually going on here, so they create a new label that sounds like there's something wrong with it. Sounds like you're against a race, and that's another card the Jews play, is claiming that they are a race. It's just a psychopathic tribe with an idea, a cult ideology that's existed for thousands of years, where they believe themselves to be superior to everyone outside of their religion. They claim to be God's chosen people, and that they were put here on earth to be masters, and that everyone else are just animals in human form to serve them. I mean, this is literal word for word from their holy book, saying that us goyim, as they call us, which means cattle, us cattle are only here, put in human form to better serve them. If we were animals, we wouldn't have, opposable thumbs and all the necessary things to be good servants. Sounds crazy, but it gets even deeper than this. I mean, they talk about how if a Gentile hits a Jew, the Gentile must be killed. If you steal something from a Gentile, it can be kept. If a Jew murders a Gentile, he must be killed. But if a Gentile, the other way around, if a Jew murders a Gentile, it's God's work. It's fine.
Well, when you say that they have been expelled 109 times, oh, you're an anti-Semite. Folks, once again, these are facts from the year 250 until it happened, 1948, actually. Why can't you question it? Why can't we just sit down and say, please, I have nothing against Jews because I know many of them, they're nice people. But why can't I sit down and ask why they were expelled 109 times from different locations? And they just say, oh, this is not true. I have a list right in front of me. Why is it so bad to ask the question?
Right. In 18 countries in Europe, it's illegal to talk about the Holocaust. Right. You can't, they'll call it
criminalized
revisionism if you point out evidence of the lack of a Holocaust, the lack of gas chambers, the lack of execution orders by Hitler. If you point out these things, you will be put in prison, and many researchers and authors have been put in prison under these laws. It's the only historical event that you are legally unable to talk about. Why? Because it reveals that they are lying to you about the Holocaust, and that they are the ones that are behind everything, literally wars, the banking system, the mainstream media, this ball earth deception, circumcision, kosher slaughter, meat eating in general, Semitic. The entire conspiracy, as Hitler knew, is Jewish in origin. That's where it comes from. And that's why Hitler is the most demonized person in history, because when you go up against the greatest liars in history and you lose, you're going to become the most lied about man in history. And that's what's happened to Hitler. And that's why the Holocaust is not allowed to be talked about anywhere in Europe. It's illegal. And that's why they don't want you talking about those 109 countries they've been kicked out. They'll just tell you those countries were all 109 of them, they were anti-Semitic.
Or they talk about the Holocaust, but they don't talk about Lenin and Trotsky, how many they killed.
Of course, they don't want you to know how many people, how many Christians, how many Gentiles the Jewish Bolsheviks killed, how many tens of millions were killed by Jews. They just want you to know this fake number of 6 million Jews they claim died in the fake Holocaust, so that you'll see them as perpetual victims. And Steven Spielberg will put out a new victimhood movie for everyone to see every year, and everyone will continue believing that the Jews are the most...
You mean like Schindler's List, the fictional movie?
Absolutely. Exactly. People think that this is, what actually happened. I recommend people view my documentary called Adolf Hitler versus the Jew World Order. And you'll see exactly what the Jews have been up to for the past couple thousand years, exactly why Hitler has become the most demonized man in history, and how close to the mark he was on pointing out who's in control of this worldwide deception, this huge conspiracy that's convinced us of a spinning ball Earth and has placed Rothschild central banks in all but 3 countries in the world now that are under Jewish usury. The reason that now the United Nations is taking power and we're starting to have this world Jewish government with 33 degrees of the flat Earth in their logo, this deception, it's huge. It's a huge conspiracy, multi-generational, and it's been going from the Jews through the Freemasons to NASA to, like I said, banking system, the mainstream media, Hollywood, completely created and maintained by Jews. And this is admitted. This is not like difficult information to find. They admit it themselves. The problem is that the mainstream media is so censored by these people that nobody's really talking about it, and anybody that does gets squashed instantly, both by terms like anti-Semite and other ridicule, as well as legally by their slush funds that they have to come after people like myself. And physically, if you get beyond that, they're not beyond murdering you if you say something beyond what they're going to allow.
I'm going to lean. I don't mean to interrupt you, but I know it's we've been here for more than 2 hours. So if you can give me a few more minutes, because I have a couple of questions left. Are you okay with that?
Absolutely.
I'm going to lean into discomfort for a moment. before I ask you the question, I must confess that every time, Eric, I've conducted a presentation, the hecklers, the ones who have attacked me from every direction, have been Jewish. What am I saying that this overrepresented segment of the population doesn't like? But let me just ask you then, are they the ultimate gatekeepers of the truth?
Right. They're the ultimate arbiters of the conspiracy itself, and they and their minions are the gatekeepers, absolutely. And Freemasonry is the Gentile arm of Judaism, as they've said themselves. So they absolutely set up not only themselves, but they reach into Gentile culture and give us their psychopathic tribal ideologies and make the Freemasons think that they're part of this and they're special. And so whether you're a Jew or a Freemason or even someone outside of that, they've done such a good job, with Hollywood and whatnot. We think that the Jews are all comedians. You got all celebrities, and then academia and intelligentsia, they dominate it, not because they're so much smarter than us, but that they're so much more organized and cunning than we are. The average person is maybe much smarter than the average Jew, but they're certainly not more cunning. Psychopaths, sociopaths, narcissists. This is a psychological term for people who have no empathy, no compassion, no remorse. They're just predators. And this seems to be who gravitates towards Judaism and Freemasonry. And Judaism and Freemasonry also produces psychopaths and sociopaths because...
And less than 12% of the people living in Israel are true Semitic.
Right. Yeah, there's the Ashkenazi, Sephardic... Khazars, right? So there's... And of course, you got Ethiopian Jews. You got Jews of every nationality, race, color, creed, country. But they claim that they're a race. They when they want to, of course. Sometimes they'll claim not to be when that's convenient. But what they do is they say that anyone born of a Jewish mother, regardless of belief, remains a Jew for all of lifetime. And so through this weird idea, they're able to now be somewhere in between a religion and a race and to use religious and racial ideologies whenever it suits them. So they can be a race if they want to, a religion if they want to, they're whatever. But you can hear them talk about themselves. What they really are is a psychopathic tribal cult convinced that they are the supreme humans and all humans outside of their cult should serve them.
And they're always playing the victim, and I wonder why we send them billions of dollars every year. Because last time I checked, they're pretty smart. And if you and I are born in Israel and we have several generations of father, grandfather, great-grandfather, but we're not Jewish, we're not Israeli citizens, we're just residents of the country.
Right.
Legal residents.
Germany's still paying reparations. They've been paying for like 100 years since World War I. They've been paying the Jews and other countries under Jewish control war reparations for what they didn't do. Hitler just wanted peace, and it was the Judea, the worldwide Jewry, which declared war on Germany, not the other way around. We've been fed all this propaganda that Hitler was trying to take over the world or something, when he was actually a response to Jewish Bolshevism and Stalin in Russia and everything he was doing. And he was taking over the world, him along with his Jew financiers and backers, and Hitler was trying to stop them. So in school, I never had a single unit on Stalin. Every single year, though, we had a unit on Hitler about how bad he was. I remember that explicitly. And it wasn't until I got out of college that I finally started looking into it myself and found out, even if you believe every mainstream lie about Hitler, Stalin was way worse. Why don't we hear about him? Makes no sense.
And nobody says that, Marxist Jews were the ones responsible for, what happened in Russia, what became the Soviet Union. And I think when you think of the United States and the overrepresentation, when you quote, 2 days prior to the enactment of the German Constitution on 23 May 1948, a secret treaty, I don't speak German, the Geheimer Staatsvertrag was signed, which gave complete Allied control over electronic and print media, film, culture, and education until the year 2099. Keep a few generations brainwashed, Eric, for 150 years, and no one will ever remember what really happened. A very clever plan.
Very clever. Absolutely. They're cunning. If you've ever known a psychopath or a sociopath, you know that they are ridiculously good at getting revenge. They're amazing at getting you back at perceived slights. They view themselves as the eternal victim, and everyone around them has slighted them, and they're excellent at getting you back for whatever it is that they've perceived that you've done to them. And you'll notice this in one of the main religions in the world today that we're talking about. They just constantly play the victim. But in reality, they're the perpetrator. But isn't that the way to do it?
Yeah, and when we think of flat Earth, we think like what people are saying probably, what do Jews have to do with this? Well, because, folks, there's a lot of truth that's being hidden from us for millennia. And you have to understand who controls publishing, who controls the media, who controls government. I have just one question left. One question left here. David from Louisiana, I'm not going to read yours because I think we have already answered your question throughout the interview. But the last question, Mark from Landenberg, Pennsylvania. Hey, Eric, allowing for the changing landscape that has brought our quote-unquote plain Earth to its current state, which quote-unquote flat Earth map, do you believe is the most accurate, as verified to scale by recordable travel distances, and how do meteors, asteroids, and comets fit into the flat Earth model? Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, well, like we said earlier, I'm not sure any of the maps are totally accurate, though I would say the Gleason's map is probably one of the best ones to look into. And meteors, asteroids, comets, shooting stars, so many names for apparently the same thing, that they're still a mystery to me. And, what stars are exactly is a mystery to me. What stars which shoot across the sky with a little tail across them and then burn up, what those are, that's a mystery. When they come down to Earth and they make a big fireball and then disappear, what is that? And then sometimes they have big craters on Earth which they claim are meteor impacts, but then there's no debris, there's no meteor rocks or anything left whatsoever. And there's actually gas pockets which have formed these same kind of things from under the Earth. So the mainstream explanation for what meteorites are is that there are these rocks floating in space that sometimes will come to the Earth and burn up or sometimes impact onto the surface. But I'm not seeing this happen. We've never recorded an actual explosion of a rock hitting the Earth. They've only showed us pictures of the aftermath, which looks, like I said, could be a geothermal gas pocket. You look that up on Wikipedia, they look exactly like the meteorite impacts. So I don't know how they can claim to tell the difference between these. And then with the lights in the sky shooting across the sky, this is a mystery to me. I mean, stars, they twinkle, they change color, green, blue, purple, red, and they're twinkling, like the song says, "Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are." Well, I wonder because I'm legitimate. NASA doesn't wonder. They just give you bullshit explanations, and they'll tell you, well, the stars are distant suns trillions of miles away with their own planets and solar systems around them. So they give you an explanation, and you can hold on to that. But does it stand up to scrutiny? No. It's not a sun. I can see it changing color off my balcony, every night. How could it possibly be that? Why are they all the same size if they're distant suns of different sizes at varying trillions of miles? Why do they all look like little dots of light? They're giving us fake explanations so that we feel good, like we know the universe. We know what stars are. We know what meteors are. We have a map. We know what the Earth looks like. But then someone like me comes along and says, well, I'm not exactly sure of the correct map. I don't really know what stars are. I don't know where the edge of the flat Earth is. Oh, it's starting to sound dubious. This guy acts like he knows answers, but now he doesn't have answers like NASA does. NASA gives us all these concrete answers. This is it. People want to have answers for stuff that we can't know. And if somebody's willing to give them to you with a straight face and a nice logo and, a uniform, and they say it, repeat it long enough and often enough, people will believe that instead of believing in a mystery, instead of waiting for physical evidence, instead of opening their minds and allowing it to be what it will be. they just close their minds off to the nearest liar that tells them they have all the answers.
And NASA is, you can look at the charter. This is not a lie. This is not speculation. It is a branch of the Department of Defense. And if they see anything that the population should not see, that's why they have to always send information to the Department of Defense first. But I have to say this before we end. Folks, you will never arrive at truth by accepting what other people tell you. You will only arrive at it by questioning everything you were ever told. Don't take anything as truth until you verify for yourself.
So I'm just out in my yard. A lot of people forget that you can create your own rainbow if you just turn on a sprinkler. And if the sun is angled the right way, only when you're outdoors, you will get a rainbow. So that's the first question. Why can you not simulate a rainbow indoors? There's a stipulation. You can create a rainbow indoors, but you need a mirror. You need a mirror to do a science test and create a rainbow inside. So I beg the question, if you need a mirror indoors, what's providing the mirror when you are outdoors? And I don't know if you see this, but it really doesn't matter. It really does not matter about the water, where the mist is. Doesn't matter what my position to it is. The curve does not change. It is a fixed hologram in space. Now, modern science says what's happening is an optical illusion. It's forming on your eyeball, and I guess in this case they would say it's the camera's sensor. But they say that a rainbow is happening on your eyeball. You're having your own unique experience. When you see a rainbow, the person standing next to you won't have the same experience. That's what they claim, because they say each water droplet is creating a prism that is taking the white light and separating it out into all the different colors. I don't think that makes any sense, guys. I think what's actually happening is that each water droplet of this 3D field, each water droplet is acting as its own lens. And so this lens is going to be slightly different from this lens. Not that each water droplet is projecting its own rainbow. That's totally absurd.
In 1913, Sagnac carried out a simple experiment of passing light in opposite directions around a table and recombining them. This produced interference fringes. He then rotated the whole table at 2 revolutions per second and found that the fringes changed. This result has very significant implications in science. It works as follows. A beam of light leaves the light source at the bottom left-hand corner and is split into two different beams, which we have coloured red and blue just to distinguish them. They travel round the circuit in opposite directions until they eventually reach the splitter, which also recombines them. There, they then go on to the photographic plate, where they have interference fringes. In this simplified version, we see that the beam is split into two, the red and the blue again, and they go round the circuit and are recombined at the splitter and recombining prism, so that they again produce the fringes on the photographic plate. Now let us rotate the table. Before we do so, there is the very important subject of the effect of the ether. The Michelson-Morley experiment failed to detect the 30 kilometers per second motion of the Earth through the ether. So as to overcome this problem, Einstein simply abolished the ether in his relativity theory. The very significant result of the Sagnac experiment was that it proved that the ether existed. Let us see how it did this. It is a fundamental feature of relativity that it claims that as there is no ether, light travels away from a source at the same speed relative to the source, whether the source is moving or not. Thus, whether the table is turning or not, the fringe patterns should stay the same. But if the ether exists, once the light has left the source, the speed of the light is controlled by the ether, independent of the speed of the table, mirrors, etc., as we see here. So let us see what happens when we rotate the table. Here, the light is split, and the red and blue lights go in opposite directions. But notice that the left-hand mirror has moved around in such a direction that the distance the red light has to travel is further. Now in relativity, the same time should be taken because the splitter is also moving and the distance between them is the same. But now imagine that the ether exists and the speed of the light is controlled by the stationary ether. Imagine the ether like a thick treacle that limits how fast the light can travel, independent of the motion of the light source, the splitter, or the mirrors. The result is that the red light takes longer to reach the left-hand mirror. Similarly, the right-hand mirror is coming towards the blue light, so it reaches the mirror quicker. After they change ends, the red light again takes longer to reach the recombiner, whilst the blue light gets there quicker again. So they reach the photographic plate with a delay between them, and this changes the fringe pattern. In fact, Sagnac, using the speed of the rotation of the table, calculated how much the fringes should change, and found that they did change by just that amount. The crucial feature of this experiment is that it demonstrates that the ether does exist, which demolishes relativity. How does the scientific establishment deal with this result? By muddying the waters with scientific gobbledygook. Wikipedia says, in the above discussion, the rotation mentioned is a rotation with respect to an inertial reference frame. Since this experiment does not involve a relativistic velocity, the same wording is valid both in the context of classical electrodynamics and special relativity. How on earth can it be valid in both theories? It clearly proves that the ether exists because the speed of the light is controlled by the ether, independent of the rotating table and mirrors. This Sagnac effect is used by airlines for their compass directions. As the plane turns, the change in the fringes are translated into a change in the direction of the plane that then registers on the cockpit compass. In addition, I have received comments from 2 scientists complaining that they were never taught about the Sagnac experiment. The first said, "After 35 years as a professional physicist with a thesis in relativity, I only learned of Sagnac's experiment last year." Another correspondent complained that his professors never mentioned these important experiments. Dear Mr. Bowden, thank you for your enjoyable and well-written website. I've enjoyed visiting there today. I was especially interested in your comments on geocentricity, which, as noted, are controversial. The amazing thing is that none of the experiments cited were ever discussed in my undergraduate education, nor the implications cited. All my life I have heard the story of how Copernicus's theory came to prevail. I would have thought that major experimental evidence, already in existence, and calling the theory into question, would have at least been cited. One feels cheated as a student, of course, to keep finding 25 years later these bodies of contrarian evidence that never are mentioned in the classroom unless a student has already researched the topics and brings them up. Yet again, we have the suppression of scientific evidence that supports creation and geocentricity.
Questions unanswered. How exactly do sprites form, and what accounts for their peculiar shape? To answer these questions, the group decides to try something that's never been done: to fly closer to sprites and to photograph them simultaneously with 2 different cameras on 2 different airplanes, hoping to combine these images digitally and reveal the anatomy of a sprite.
So it's very exciting for us.
They chose the area where the Great Plains meet the Rocky Mountains as a likely place to hunt for sprites because it's famous for very big nighttime thunderstorms. But only the biggest lightning flashes of all produce sprites. Outside, lightning flashes are everywhere. A monster cloud with a diameter of more than 300 miles is releasing electricity with frightening intensity. The scientists rush to position their gear. The frustration and anticipation of the previous week is getting to them, and tension in the cabin is high.
Sprite! Wow! That's a heck of a sprite there. Did you get it?
For an instant, a giant red flash appeared. On replay, they can see beautiful shafts of light thrusting upwards towards space.
But if you let it stay in one spot for a little while, it gets the top where you're touching kind of warm. So
The mysterious sprite in all its glory. Then, the sprites keep coming. On board, the team reviews the stunning and unique images. This sprite was shaped like a mangrove tree. It's been captured in more detail than any sprite until now. Just like its name, this sprite evokes a fairy with wings.
Yeah, very big jellyfish. It's pretty. Very pretty.
It indeed looks like a jellyfish with many tentacles. sprites of many different forms appear, one after another. Seen up close, they have a variety of shapes. Eventually, a sprite appears that demands special attention.
This is spectacular.
The umbrella-like top of this sprite reaches an altitude of around 60 miles. That's the altitude of the airglow layer that appeared in Furukawa's footage from the International Space Station. The image confirms that sprites interact with the ionosphere. Now it's time for the high-speed camera. It's designed so that when a sprite is sighted and the button is released, the previous 3 seconds of footage will be saved. This is the momentary flash of a sprite taken by the super-sensitive camera. And when shot by the high-speed camera, it looks like this. In just a few hundredths of a second, countless particles of light rain down. This is the first time a sprite's formation has ever been revealed in such detail. During the night, 14 sprites were captured by the high-speed camera.
8,000, yes, very good.
What else will the footage reveal? With great expectations, they return to the ground.
Not too bad, huh? That's amazing.
It was fabulous. It was amazing. I haven't seen anything like that ever.
The long night is over, but they know their work is just beginning. Back in Denver, the team gathers to make some scientific sense out of their spectacular sprite footage.
The halo above and the elf below, and that's just because it's expanded out in front. Right.
At first glance, this sprite may seem to burst up from the storm clouds towards space. But when seen by the high-speed camera, the movement looks completely different. Bursts of light appear out of the center, spreading both up and down. In fact, when examined in slow motion, it appears that sprite formation is more complicated than early reports had indicated. And what about this sprite shaped like angels' wings? With this one too, bursts of light suddenly appear out of darkness. They go down, and the next moment up, and then down again. They change their direction as they unfold. So what is really happening? Within the sprite, electrons are colliding with charged particles in the atmosphere, creating a pathway for the electrons to travel. Where they go depends on the concentration of electrons and the composition of the atmosphere. Sprites are beautiful and intriguing. But do they actually have a role to play in Earth's upper atmosphere? Yukihiro Takahashi is investigating the aftermath of a sprite. Once the electrons cut open a path, the atmosphere around it becomes highly electrified. Following the sprite's path, a large electric current continues to flow from the thundercloud to the ionosphere, which shows up